Welcome to an exploration of one of nature's most fascinating paradoxes. In our oceans swim creatures of extraordinary power, intelligence, and predatory capability. They are faster, stronger, and more strategically sophisticated than almost any other marine hunter. They possess the ability to organize, communicate, and execute hunting strategies that can bring down animals 50 times their size. And yet, despite millennia of human presence in the oceans, despite countless interactions between humans and these magnificent predators, there has never been a single recorded instance of one of these creatures hunting a human being in the wild. No attack. No predation. No tragedy born from hunger or territorial aggression in nature's unforgiving waters. These creatures are orcas, often called killer whales, though that common name carries significant misconceptions about their true nature. They represent a pinnacle of evolution, a remarkable example of how intelligence, culture, and sophisticated decision-making can shape predatory behavior in ways that confound our conventional understanding of apex predators. Their refusal to hunt humans is not born from fear or weakness, but from something far more complex: intelligence, empathy, cultural transmission, and an intricate understanding of their world that rivals anything we find among terrestrial mammals. This documentary explores the biological, intellectual, and cultural reasons why orcas, the ocean's most powerful apex predators, have never been recorded hunting humans in the wild. We will dive deep into their anatomy, their intelligence, their sophisticated social structures, and the cultural knowledge that defines them. We will examine how they distinguish between appropriate prey and inappropriate prey through advanced sensory systems. We will explore their emotional capacity and their ability to teach and learn across generations. We will contrast the peaceful coexistence between wild orcas and humans with the tragic consequences of captivity, where these remarkable beings can be driven to behavior radically different from their natural state. And we will confront the environmental threats that now endanger not just individual orcas, but the very cultural traditions that have allowed these species to thrive for thousands of years. Please let us know in the comments where you are watching this video and what time you are watching it. Your engagement helps us understand how this content reaches people around the world. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for future videos exploring the mysteries of our natural world and the incredible creatures that inhabit it. Now, let us begin our journey into the depths of the ocean, where intelligence meets apex predation, and where a remarkable peace has existed for longer than human history itself. Section 1. Understanding the Orca. Taxonomy and initial misconceptions. The first step in understanding why orcas never hunt humans requires us to set aside one of the most pervasive misconceptions in marine biology, that orcas are whales. The term, killer whale, has embedded itself so deeply into popular culture that the alternative name, orca, is often considered merely a nickname or translation variant. In reality, the taxonomic truth is far more nuanced and considerably more revealing about the nature of these creatures. Orcas are not whales at all. They are, in fact, the largest members of the delphinid family, the dolphin family. This classification places them in closer biological relationship to common dolphins, bottlenose dolphins, and spinner dolphins than to any true whale species. This distinction is not merely academic pedantry. It carries significant implications for understanding their behavior, intelligence, and social structure. The scientific name, Orcinus orca, comes from Latin and Greek origins. The word Orcinus derives from the Greek word orc, which originally referred to a whale or large sea creature, though the etymological path from this ancient term to the modern understanding of orcas as dolphins rather than whales represents a fascinating journey through scientific discovery and reclassification. When Carl Linnaeus first formally classified the species in the 18th century, the understanding of marine taxonomy was far less developed than it would become. The term, killer whale, emerged from early descriptions of the species as aggressive predators that hunted other cetaceans, giving the name both an accurate descriptive quality and an unfortunately sensationalized character. Throughout the 19th and into the 20th century, marine biologists gradually recognized that orcas shared far more biological characteristics with dolphins than with large baleen or toothed whales. Their skeletal structure, their reproductive biology, their neurological organization, and their social behavior all aligned far more closely with dolphins than with whale species. This reclassification reflected not a change in the animals themselves, but an improvement in human understanding of marine mammal taxonomy. The implications of this taxonomic placement cannot be overstated. Dolphins, as a family, are characterized by certain defining traits. They are toothed cetaceans, meaning they possess conical teeth designed for grasping prey rather than the baleen plates that filter-feeding whales possess. They are relatively smaller than the largest whale species, though orcas represent the dramatic exception to this size expectation within their family. They exhibit sophisticated social behavior, complex communication systems, and evidence of culture, the transmission of learned behaviors across generations. They demonstrate playfulness, complex cognition, and emotional sophistication. They are generally more adaptable to different marine environments than the more specialized whale species. By placing orcas within the dolphin family rather than among whales, we immediately establish a framework for understanding their behavior that differs from our expectations of whale species. Whales, in popular imagination, are often portrayed as gentle, contemplative creatures. The humpback whale with its haunting songs, the gray whale with its remarkable migrations, the blue whale as a symbol of peaceful gigantism. This cultural association with gentleness and intelligence tempered by passivity does not match the orca's ecological role. Orcas occupy a position within their family that is unique. They are apex predators in the truest sense. While most dolphin species feed on fish and smaller marine animals, orcas hunt some of the ocean's largest and most formidable creatures. This hunting prowess, combined with their size, adult males can reach 32 feet in length and weigh up to 6 tons, distinguishes them dramatically from their dolphin cousins. An adult male orca can be 6 times longer and infinitely more powerful than a typical bottlenose dolphin, yet they share the same basic neurological architecture and social complexity. The name, killer whale, itself warrants deeper examination, not to dismiss it, but to understand what it reveals about human perception and the early European understanding of the species. When European whalers and mariners first extensively encountered orcas in the 16th and 17th centuries, they observed something remarkable. These animals actively hunted whales, including species many times their own weight. The whalers saw orcas as competitors, as threats to their commercial enterprises, and as examples of nature's most ruthless predators. The name, killer whale, emerged from these observations and from a certain amount of anthropomorphic interpretation. 19th-century naturalists, drawing from whalers' accounts, described orcas as fierce, bloodthirsty, and indiscriminately savage. This characterization, while containing kernels of truth about orca predatory capability, obscured a more complex reality. Yes, orcas hunt whales. Yes, they are formidable predators. But the specificity of their hunting, the fact that different populations hunt different prey, that they employ sophisticated, learned techniques, that they show clear preferences and cultural variations, was not well understood until decades of modern scientific observation. The term, killer whale, captured the predatory reality but missed the intelligence, culture, and decision-making sophistication that characterizes their hunting behavior. The persistence of this misnomer in popular culture has contributed significantly to misconceptions about orca behavior in captivity and in the wild. The word killer carries connotations of indiscriminate violence, of an uncontrollable impulse to kill, of an animal motivated by pure bloodlust. These characterizations have led to profound misunderstandings about why orcas behave as they do, both in their natural ocean environment and in the unnatural confines of human captivity. Understanding that orcas are dolphins is crucial to this documentary's central theme. It places them within a family of animals known for sophistication, for culture, and for individual and group decision-making. Dolphins, as a group, are widely recognized as intelligent, often playful, and capable of complex social interaction. The orca, as the apex hunter within this family, combines these characteristics with predatory prowess that exceeds that of any other dolphin species. The physical structure of the orca reflects this unique position. An adult male orca displays a striking appearance, a black body with white markings, including a distinctive white eye patch and white saddle patch behind the dorsal fin, with white undersides. This coloration pattern is thought to serve various functions: thermoregulation, camouflage, and possibly individual and group identification. The dorsal fin of an adult male is tall and prominent, sometimes exceeding 6 feet in height, whereas females and juvenile males possess more curved, shorter dorsal fins. These physical differences are visible from considerable distances, allowing individual identification and possibly serving communicative functions within pods. The skeleton of the orca reveals their predatory adaptation. Unlike the skulls of most dolphin species, which are relatively symmetrical, the orca skull shows asymmetries that correlate with their predatory specialization. Their teeth are large, conical, and designed for grasping and tearing prey. An adult orca may possess up to 60 teeth, arranged in rows in both upper and lower jaws. These teeth are not designed for chewing but for seizing and manipulating prey, holding animals in place while other pod members join in coordinated hunting efforts. The size of the orca brain compared to body size places them among the most intelligent cetaceans. While the absolute size of the whale brain exceeds that of the orca possesses a higher brain-to-body ratio than most whale species and comparable brain complexity. More significantly, the orca brain contains certain structures that indicate advanced cognitive capacity, structures we will explore in greater detail later in this documentary. The evolutionary history that led to the orca's position as the largest dolphin and the ocean's apex predator remains incompletely understood, but paleontological evidence suggests that cetaceans as a whole, both dolphins and whales, evolved from land-dwelling mammals that returned to the ocean approximately 50 million years ago. The fossil record shows transitional forms that possess both terrestrial and aquatic adaptations, eventually giving rise to the fully aquatic cetaceans we know today. Within this lineage, orcas represent a relatively recent development, with fossil evidence suggesting modern orca characteristics emerged within the last few million years. The adaptations that mark orcas as apex predators are numerous and profound. Their hydrodynamic body shape allows speeds exceeding 30 miles per hour in burst movements, valuable for pursuing prey. Their flippers and flukes provide remarkable maneuverability for animals of their size, allowing coordinated movement and complex three-dimensional maneuvering. Their respiratory system, modified for aquatic life, allows them to dive to considerable depths in pursuit of prey, holding their breath for extended periods. Their sensory systems, particularly their echolocation abilities, provide them with information about their environment that would seem almost miraculous to creatures dependent solely on vision and hearing. Yet none of these remarkable adaptations, none of this predatory prowess, has ever resulted in a wild orca hunting a human being. This fact stands in stark contrast to what we might predict from a purely biological perspective. A creature with the size, speed, sensory capability, and predatory specialization of an orca would seem to be an ideal hunter of any medium-sized marine animal, including humans. The fact that this never occurs is not a mystery to be solved but rather a phenomenon whose explanation reveals profound truths about orca intelligence, decision-making, and culture. Section 2. The Orca Brain, Neurological Sophistication and Cognitive Capacity. The question of why orcas never hunt humans cannot be answered at the level of anatomy or physiology alone. A creature's behavior emerges not from isolated physical traits but from the integration of sensory input, neuroprocessing, memory, learning, social influence, and decision-making. Understanding the orca brain is therefore essential to understanding orca behavior. The orca brain is large, approximately 15 to 17 pounds for adult males, making it among the largest brains in the animal kingdom in absolute terms. Sperm whales possess larger brains, and elephant brains exceed orca brains in size, yet the orca brain's sophistication rivals that of these land mammals in many respects. What matters is not size alone but organization, neurological complexity, and the presence of specific structures associated with higher cognition. Modern neuroscience has identified certain brain structures as particularly associated with complex cognitive function, emotional sophistication, and social behavior. Among these, the structures collectively referred to as the limbic system play crucial roles in emotional processing and decision-making. The neocortex, the outermost layer of the brain, is associated with higher-order reasoning, sensory processing, and behavioral planning. The presence of certain types of neurons within these structures correlates with various forms of cognitive and emotional sophistication. In recent decades, neuroscientists have identified within the orca brain the presence of spindle neurons, specialized cells that are thought to be involved in higher-order emotional processing, self-awareness, and empathy. Spindle neurons were first identified in human brains, where they are believed to play significant roles in complex emotional responses, the capacity to feel empathy, and the ability to understand the emotional states of others. The discovery of spindle neurons in orca brains, and in the brains of other cetaceans, as well as some large terrestrial mammals like elephants and great apes, has profound implications for understanding cetacean consciousness and emotional capability. The density and distribution of spindle neurons within the orca brain indicates that these animals possess neurological architecture suited for complex emotional processing. This neurological sophistication enables orcas to experience emotions beyond simple reactions to immediate stimuli. An orca can experience emotional states tied to social relationships, to memory of past events, and to anticipation of future occurrences. An orca can form emotional bonds with other orcas that persist across years and decades. An orca can experience distress at separation from social companions, can grieve the loss of pod members, and can demonstrate preference for certain individuals. This emotional sophistication appears to be directly connected to orca behavior, including their behavior toward potential prey. The ability to experience empathy, to imagine or sense the emotional state of another being, likely influences orca hunting decisions. An orca that can experience empathy toward other orcas may extend similar capacities toward other marine mammals or, potentially, toward humans. The recognition of another being as a subject with feelings, with a capacity to suffer, with bonds to other individuals, such recognition could influence the decision of whether to treat that being as appropriate prey. The orca brain also contains structures associated with complex social cognition. Cetaceans possess enlarged cerebral hemispheres relative to other marine mammals, with complex folding of the cortex that indicates expansive cortical tissue dedicated to sensory and cognitive processing. This cortical expansion correlates with social complexity in terrestrial mammals. Larger, more complex neocortices are typically found in animals with more intricate social structures. The correlation between brain structure and social complexity observed in orcas suggests that their neurological architecture has been shaped by, and is adapted for, the demands of living in sophisticated social groups. The architecture of orca social interaction, which we will examine in greater detail later, places significant cognitive demands on individual orcas. To maintain stable social relationships within a pod, to remember the identity and status of multiple other individuals, to navigate complex social hierarchies and alliances, to cooperate in coordinated hunting efforts. All of these require cognitive capacities that correlate with enlarged, complexly folded neocortices. The orca brain, in its organization and structure, reflects its owner's position as a highly social, highly intelligent predator. The sensory cortices of the orca brain, the regions dedicated to processing information from sensory organs, are proportionally larger than in many other mammals, reflecting the orca's reliance on vision, hearing, and echolocation. The auditory cortex, in particular, is highly developed, indicating the processing demands of echolocation and complex social communication. An orca must process echolocation returns bouncing off objects in the ocean, creating a detailed auditory map of its environment. Simultaneously, it must listen to and process vocalizations from pod mates, distinguishing individual voices and understanding the meaning of different sounds. This simultaneous sensory processing of multiple information streams requires considerable cortical tissue dedicated to auditory processing. The motor cortices of the orca brain, the regions controlling body movement, are highly developed in areas controlling flippers, tail flukes, and the blowhole region, reflecting the sophistication of orca movement. Orcas demonstrate remarkable precision in movement control, from high-speed chases to intricate, coordinated maneuvers within pods. This motor sophistication requires the neural infrastructure that the orca brain provides. Yet perhaps most significant for our investigation is what neurological research reveals about orca cognition and decision-making. The orca brain possesses the anatomical infrastructure for abstract thought, for the consideration of options, for decision-making based on information beyond immediate sensory input. When an orca encounters a potential food source, its brain does not simply trigger a predatory response. Rather, the orca's brain integrates multiple sources of information: sensory information about the creature in question, memories of past interactions with similar creatures, learned information about what constitutes appropriate prey within its population, social information about what its podmates are doing, and emotional or empathetic information about the creature as a subject with its own existence. All of this integration happens rapidly, unconsciously in many respects. The orca does not necessarily consciously deliberate about each decision it makes. But the neurological capacity for such sophisticated processing underlies its behavior. The orca brain, in its structure and organization, is built for the kind of complex decision-making that would be necessary to consistently refuse to hunt humans despite the physical ability to do so. Modern cetacean neuroscience has also revealed that orca brains show evidence of specialization within different brain regions for different types of information processing. This regional specialization, known as localization of function, appears to be more pronounced in orcas than in many other dolphin species, suggesting that orca cognitive processes involve distributed networks of brain regions working in concert. Such distributed processing is associated with complex cognition in terrestrial mammals like primates and carnivores. The temporal lobes of the orca brain, associated with memory formation and social cognition in humans and other mammals, appear to be proportionally large. Long-term memory is essential for the cultural transmission of hunting techniques and social knowledge that characterizes orca populations. An orca must remember not just the immediate details of a hunt but the context, the technique, the location, and the outcome. It must retain these memories across years and decades, incorporating them into a mental library of experience that informs future behavior. The orca brain's temporal lobe development reflects this requirement for sophisticated, long-term memory formation and retrieval. Furthermore, research into cetacean cognition has documented remarkable evidence of metacognition in orcas, that is, the ability to think about thinking, to be aware of one's own cognitive processes. Orcas in research settings have demonstrated the ability to recognize themselves in mirrors, a capacity long considered an indicator of self-awareness. While the extent of this self-awareness and its functional significance remain subjects of scientific investigation, the presence of self-recognition in orcas indicates a level of consciousness and self-reflection that goes beyond simple stimulus-response behavior. This self-awareness and sophisticated cognition may contribute to another aspect of orca behavior relevant to our investigation: their apparent understanding of their own power and capability. Unlike some apex predators that attack seemingly indiscriminately, orcas demonstrate apparent knowledge of their own capabilities and limitations. They understand what they can and cannot kill, what is and is not appropriate prey, and how to conduct hunts in their particular environment. This understanding appears to be taught and learned, rather than purely instinctual, which speaks to the cognitive sophistication underlying orca predatory behavior. The orca brain also shows evidence of hemispheric specialization, similar to what is observed in humans and some other mammals. Different brain hemispheres appear to be specialized for different types of processing. One hemisphere may be more specialized for processing novel information, while the other is more efficient at processing routine, familiar information. Such hemispheric specialization suggests cognitively advanced information processing that allows rapid assessment of new situations while maintaining expertise in familiar tasks. Comparative studies of orca brains have revealed that certain brain regions show greater development in orcas than in other dolphin species of more similar size. This additional neural tissue in specific regions associated with complex social cognition and emotional processing indicates that evolution has favored expanded capacity for these functions in orcas. The enlarged brain regions correlate with the orca's complex social life and sophisticated hunting behavior, suggesting that selection pressures favoring social and cognitive sophistication have shaped orca brain evolution. The presence of mirror neurons in the orca brain, neurons that activate both when an animal performs an action and when it observes another animal performing the same action, further indicates the neural basis for understanding the behavior and, potentially, the mental states of others. Mirror neurons are thought to underlie empathy and imitation learning in humans and other primates. Their presence in orcas suggests similar capacities for empathetic understanding and for learning by observation. All of this neurological evidence converges on a single conclusion: the orca brain is organized for sophisticated cognition, complex social behavior, emotional sensitivity, and the capacity to learn and make decisions beyond the level of simple instinctual responses. The orca is not a creature of pure instinct, reflexively attacking any creature that triggers predatory responses. Rather, the orca is a creature of reflection, learning, and cultural knowledge, a creature whose behavior emerges from the integration of neurological sophistication, learned behavior, emotional capacity, and social influence. This neurological understanding provides the foundation for explaining why orcas never hunt humans. The explanation is not that orcas are incapable of hunting humans. Clearly they possess the physical and neurological capabilities. The explanation lies in the way the orca brain processes information about potential prey, the way learned behavior and cultural knowledge shape orca hunting decisions, and the way orca emotional sophistication and empathy influence predatory behavior. Section 3. The sensory world of the ORCA. Echolocation and environmental perception. To understand why orcas never hunt humans, we must understand how orcas perceive the world. The sensory world of an orca is profoundly different from human sensory experience, structured by capabilities that humans do not possess and absence of capacities that humans rely upon heavily. Chief among these differences is echolocation, the ability to navigate and perceive the environment through the emission and analysis of sound waves. Echolocation is not unique to orcas. It is found in many odontocetes, toothed cetaceans, including dolphins, porpoises, and belugas. It is also found in bats and some cave-dwelling birds. But in orcas, echolocation reaches a sophistication that rivals that of any echolocating species. An orca produces clicks, short, sharp bursts of sound with frequencies typically ranging from 40 kHz to over 100 kHz, well above the upper range of human hearing. These clicks are produced in the nasal passages of the orca, specifically in structures called the nasal plugs, and are emitted through the melon, a fatty organ in the forehead that acts as an acoustic lens, focusing the sound into a directed beam. When these sound waves encounter an object in the ocean, they reflect back toward the orca. The orca's lower jaw, which is relatively thin and filled with fat that conducts sound particularly well, receives these returning echoes. The sound is transmitted from the jaw through a fatty channel called the melon to the inner ear and then to the auditory nerves, which transmit the information to the brain for processing. This entire process, emission of a click, reflection from an object, return of the echo, neuroprocessing, happens at remarkable speed, allowing an orca to build an extremely detailed three-dimensional acoustic image of its environment. The amount of information an orca can extract from echolocation is extraordinary. By analyzing the time delay between emission and echo return, the orca determines distance. By analyzing changes in frequency due to the Doppler effect, the orca determines whether an object is approaching or moving away. By analyzing the strength of the returning echoes, the orca determines the size and density of an object. By emitting clicks at different frequencies and angles, the orca builds a detailed map of three-dimensional space with remarkable precision. More remarkably still, echolocation provides information about the internal structure of objects. A solid rock returns a different echo pattern than a fish with an air-filled swim bladder. Different types of tissue, with different densities, reflect sound differently. An orca using echolocation can determine not just the shape and size of an object but also its composition. A whale with a substantial blubber layer reflects sound differently than a seal with thinner blubber. A human with dense bone and air-filled lungs creates a particular acoustic signature that an orca, with sufficient experience, could readily distinguish from its normal prey. Research on orca echolocation has demonstrated that orcas possess remarkable discrimination abilities. Orcas can distinguish between different species of prey at considerable distances. They can detect the presence of fish species that are their preferred prey while ignoring other fish species. This discrimination is not based on visual identification or trial-and-error hunting. It emerges from the acoustic signatures that different creatures produce and reflect. The implications of this for our investigation are profound. An orca does not hunt humans because orcas, through echolocation, can distinguish humans from prey animals with absolute clarity. The acoustic signature of a human, the pattern of echoes reflected from human bone structure, the presence of air-filled lungs, the particular arrangement of soft tissue and skeletal structure, is utterly distinct from that of seals, sea lions, whales, or fish. An orca that has echolocated prey animals for years or decades would immediately recognize a human as something different from familiar prey. This recognition is not born from fear or aversion. Rather, it emerges from the orca's sophisticated perceptual system's clear ability to categorize and discriminate. The acoustic profile of a human does not match the profile of any creature that an orca normally hunts. It would be as if a human were asked to hunt a creature with anatomy utterly alien to anything it had ever encountered. Without prior experience indicating that the strange creature is food, and with sophisticated cognition suggesting alternatives, the human would likely not treat the alien creature as prey. Echolocation also provides information about other orcas and marine mammals of various species. An orca can echolocate a pod mate and gain information about that individual's health, emotional state, and even identity. The acoustic signatures of different individuals within a pod vary, allowing for individual recognition through echolocation alone, even in conditions of poor visibility. This ability to recognize individuals through echolocation contributes to the maintenance of stable social relationships and to the cultural knowledge that orcas transmit. Beyond echolocation, orcas rely on vision, though the role of vision in orca perception is more complex than casual observation might suggest. Orcas possess eyes positioned on the sides of their heads, allowing for monocular vision. Each eye sees a different field of view. Unlike humans, orcas lack the stereoscopic vision that results from binocular overlap, meaning they do not perceive three-dimensional depth through binocular cues alone. Instead, orcas appear to rely more heavily on monocular cues for depth perception, and more importantly, they rely on echolocation for detailed three-dimensional spatial awareness. The orca eye is adapted for the marine environment, with a lens shape that differs from terrestrial mammal eyes. The orca eye can detect light wavelengths that penetrate seawater particularly effectively, suggesting that vision has been shaped by adaptation to the ocean environment. Orcas appear to see well in the colors and wavelengths that penetrate ocean water effectively, whereas human vision, adapted for terrestrial environments, is less efficient in the ocean. Yet despite these visual adaptations, orcas likely rely less heavily on vision than terrestrial hunters do, particularly in deeper water where light penetration is limited. The balance between echolocation and vision varies among orca populations and likely varies across different hunting situations. Some research suggests that orcas hunting near the surface, where light penetration is better, may rely more on vision, while orcas hunting in deeper water rely more on echolocation. Different orca populations hunting different prey species may weight echolocation and vision differently according to their particular prey and environment. What is consistent across orca populations is that echolocation provides the primary mechanism through which orcas perceive their environment in detail and discrimination. Through echolocation, an orca knows exactly what type of creature it is interacting with. The acoustic profile of a human is unique, distinctive, and utterly different from any normal prey species. The hearing capabilities of orcas extend across a much broader frequency range than human hearing. While humans hear effectively from about 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz, orcas hear across a much broader range, extending to well over 100 kHz. This expanded hearing range allows orcas to detect the high-frequency clicks of echolocation and the high-frequency vocalizations that orcas use in social communication. It also means that orcas can hear acoustic information entirely imperceptible to human ears. Additionally, orcas demonstrate the ability to localize sound with remarkable precision. The position of orca ears, actually ear canals, as orcas lack external ear structures like human ears, and the acoustic properties of the orca body allow for precise determination of a sound's location. This localization ability is essential for hunting, allowing an orca to determine the location of prey based on acoustic cues. It is also essential for social communication, allowing orcas in a pod to localize the vocalizations of specific individuals. The acoustic environment of the ocean is rich with information. Natural sounds from waves, currents, and geological activity provide information about the orca's immediate environment. The sounds produced by different marine animals, the echolocation clicks of fish, the calls of marine mammals, the movements of prey, provide information about what other creatures are present and where they are located. In some cases, orcas appear to use the vocalizations of other animals as cues to the presence of prey. Orcas hunting whales, for example, have been observed to cease their own vocalizations and listen intently to the sounds made by their prey, using those sounds to localize whale pods. The sensory world of the orca is one in which acoustic information predominates. This is profoundly different from the human sensory world, in which vision and audition, limited to much lower frequencies, predominate, with smell playing a minor role in most humans. An orca's decision to hunt something is made in a sensory world where the target is known with acoustic precision, where the target's composition, health, and identity are acoustically apparent, and where the target's behavior and movements are acoustically tracked. This acoustic precision has profound implications for our investigation. When an orca encounters a human in the ocean, the orca perceives that human with acoustic clarity impossible for human observers to imagine. The orca knows, with acoustic precision, that this creature is not a seal, not a sea lion, not a whale, not a fish. The orca perceives the human as something acoustically distinct from any familiar prey. For a creature with the sophisticated cognition of an orca, with learned knowledge about what constitutes appropriate prey, such acoustic distinctness would almost certainly preclude hunting. Furthermore, the acoustic distinctiveness of humans might actively dissuade hunting. If an orca population has learned, through trial and error across generations, what creatures are and are not appropriate prey, such learning would be encoded in acoustic memories. The acoustic profile of humans would be known, either as something never tried, or as something tried and learned to be unsuitable. An orca cognizant of this learned knowledge would avoid hunting humans just as readily as it avoids hunting creatures known to be dangerous or unsuitable. The echolocation system of orcas also reveals something important about orca intention when approaching potential prey or other creatures. When an orca is hunting, it typically produces echolocation clicks at relatively high rates, rapidly building detailed acoustic images to track prey movement. When an orca is not hunting, when it is in social groups or exploring its environment, echolocation click rates may be lower. Some research suggests that orcas can modulate the acoustic intensity of their echolocation, allowing them to detect objects at different ranges or to concentrate on particular aspects of their environment. This modulation of echolocation behavior indicates active decision-making about what to monitor and investigate. An orca that encounters a human but does not begin intensive echolocation of that human might be indicating a decision that the creature is not prey worth investigating in detail. The orca's sensory behavior itself, how it uses echolocation, how intently it investigates something, reflects its assessment of what that something is. Section 4. Cultural knowledge and the transmission of hunting behavior. Perhaps the most significant factor in explaining why orcas never hunt humans lies not in orca biology or sensory capability, but in orca culture. Orcas are not born with innate knowledge of what constitutes appropriate prey. Rather, orcas learn what to hunt through observation, through participation, and through direct teaching from other orcas. This cultural transmission of hunting knowledge is one of the most remarkable features of orca society, and represents something far beyond what most people associate with animal behavior. The concept of culture in animals was once considered revolutionary and even controversial. Culture, in the scientific sense, refers to the transmission of learned behavior from one individual to another, and across generations, through non-genetic means. By this definition, orcas clearly possess culture. Different orca populations, separated by geography and living in different ocean environments, hunt different prey species using different techniques that are not learned through trial and error but are taught by experienced orcas to younger orcas. Consider the example of salmon hunting orcas in the Pacific Northwest. These orcas hunt specific species of salmon, particularly Chinook salmon, during salmon runs. The hunting technique involves positioning the orca under or beside a salmon and striking it with the tail fluke, stunning or injuring the salmon to make it easier to consume. Young orcas learn this technique by observing adults and by practicing under the supervision of more experienced pod members. A young orca does not instinctively know how to use its tail fluke to strike fish. It must learn the technique through observation and practice. Different from salmon hunting orcas are mammal hunting orcas in the same general region. These orcas hunt seals, sea lions, and other marine mammals using techniques that differ substantially from fish hunting. They approach haulouts where marine mammals rest on beaches or rocks, using coordinated movements to separate individuals from groups, and pursuing prey with high-speed chases through the water. The techniques of mammal hunting orcas are not instinctively known. They are learned and refined across the lifetime of the individual orca through participation in group hunts and observation of experienced hunters. The remarkable discovery made by marine biologists studying orca populations is that different orca populations have distinctly different diets and hunting techniques, and these differences are not determined by prey availability or genetic differences between populations. In some cases, orca populations living in the same general area with similar prey availability hunt different animals using different techniques. This variation points clearly to learned behavior rather than instinctual or genetically determined behavior. The mechanism through which this learning occurs appears to involve what scientists call cultural transmission. Younger orcas stay with their mothers and other older pod members for years, observing hunting behavior and participating in hunts. During this extended period of association, younger orcas gradually acquire the knowledge and skills characteristic of their population. The hunting techniques are demonstrated by experienced orcas. Young orcas imitate these demonstrations and refine their technique through practice and social feedback. This learning is not passive observation alone. Video and observational evidence of orca hunts shows that experienced orcas appear to deliberately teach younger orcas. When teaching a younger orca to hunt, an experienced orca may slow down a prey animal, making it an easier target for the young orca to practice on. The experienced orca may demonstrate the hunting technique repeatedly, allowing the younger orca to observe and then imitate. The younger orca is tolerated as it practices, even though it may be inefficient and may not successfully capture prey. This teaching behavior is remarkable because it indicates that orcas actively invest effort in transmitting knowledge to the next generation, rather than allowing young orcas to learn purely through independent trial and error. This investment in teaching suggests that orcas understand the value of knowledge transmission and recognize that sharing knowledge enhances the success and survival of the younger generation. The longevity of orca life allows for extended periods of cultural transmission. Female orcas can live into their 90s, while males typically live into their 60s, or occasionally longer. This extended lifespan means that multiple generations can overlap significantly within a pod, creating the opportunity for knowledge transmission across generations. A female orca that lives into her 80s will have lived alongside her daughters, her grandchildren, and possibly her great-grandchildren. This extended family structure allows for the accumulation and transmission of vast amounts of learned knowledge. The role of female matriarchs in orca societies is particularly significant for cultural transmission. In many orca populations, the oldest female in the pod appears to serve as a leader and keeper of knowledge. This matriarch is often the mother of other adult females in the pod, making the pod itself a multi-generational family unit centered on the oldest female. The matriarch appears to remember information crucial to the pod's survival: routes to salmon spawning grounds, locations of seal haulouts, migration patterns of whales, and locations of deep water feeding areas. When environmental conditions change or when food becomes scarce, the matriarch's knowledge of alternative feeding grounds or hunting areas can mean the difference between survival and starvation for the entire pod. This matriarchal structure and the role of female knowledge keepers have profound implications for cultural transmission. The matriarch, as the oldest and most experienced individual, embodies accumulated knowledge across decades. Younger orcas in the pod learn from this matriarch not just hunting techniques but also behavioral patterns, social relationships, preferences, and perhaps even ethical understandings about what is and is not appropriate to hunt. If hunting humans is something that orca populations have learned not to do, this learning would be encoded in and transmitted through the matriarchal knowledge system. An older female orca that has never hunted a human, and that has never observed humans being hunted, would teach younger orcas through example and possibly through active prevention of hunting attempts if they were to occur. Over generations, the cultural knowledge that humans are not appropriate prey would become encoded in the behavioral traditions of each orca population. Evidence for this cultural transmission of prey preferences comes from observational studies of different orca ecotypes. Scientists have identified distinct orca populations based on geographic location, prey preference, and behavioral characteristics. Off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, there are at least 3 distinct ecotypes that have been identified: resident orcas that feed almost exclusively on salmon, transient orcas, sometimes called Big's killer whales, that hunt marine mammals, and offshore orcas that hunt sharks and other deep water prey. The genetic differences between these ecotypes are minimal. They are not distinct subspecies or separate populations in the genetic sense. Rather, they are populations separated by culture, by different learned behaviors and prey preferences. The striking observation is that these different ecotypes appear to make little or no attempt to hunt the prey of the other ecotypes, even when prey from other ecotypes is available in the same areas. Resident orcas eating salmon in an area where marine mammals are abundant do not hunt those marine mammals. Transient orcas hunting marine mammals in an area where salmon are abundant do not hunt the salmon. This clear separation of prey preferences by ecotype, combined with the minimal genetic differentiation between ecotypes, points to learned, cultural prey preferences rather than genetically determined ones. How such preferences are maintained over time is a matter of continued research, but the most plausible explanations involve learning and cultural transmission. Young orcas learn what their populations hunt by observing and participating in hunts with experienced orcas. They learn not to hunt certain animals through the absence of these animals in the diet of their population and through possible active prevention if a young orca were to attempt to hunt a culturally inappropriate prey. The question of whether orcas actively teach young orcas not to hunt certain animals, or whether they passively learn through the absence of these animals in the local diet, remains open. Either way, the result is the same: learned, cultural knowledge about what is and is not appropriate prey that is maintained across generations. The implication for human-orca interaction is significant. If different orca populations maintain cultural knowledge about appropriate prey through cultural transmission across generations, and if humans have never been hunted by orcas, then the cultural knowledge transmitted to young orcas would include the understanding that humans are not prey. This understanding would be reinforced across generations, becoming ever more embedded in the behavioral traditions of each population. Furthermore, the mechanism of cultural transmission suggests that if even a single orca population had attempted to hunt humans and failed, either because humans fought back effectively or for some other reason, this failure would be communicated within and across generations, reinforcing the learned knowledge that humans are not suitable prey. An orca that survived an unsuccessful hunting attempt on a human, or that observed such an attempt by other orcas, would encode this information and potentially communicate it to other orcas in its pod. The existence of distinct hunting cultures in different orca populations also indicates that orca populations are not in constant genetic flow with each other. Each population maintains its cultural distinctness across generations. Genetic studies have shown that even orca populations that live in the same general geographic area may have limited breeding between them, maintaining distinct populations. This population structure allows for the development and maintenance of distinct cultural traditions. Yet, orcas are not isolated prisoners of their cultural inheritance. Young orcas that are the focus of cultural transmission are also capable of learning new behaviors and potentially modifying cultural traditions. If an innovation in hunting technique emerges, if one orca discovers a more effective way to catch prey, this innovation can be adopted by other orcas in the pod and potentially spread to other populations. Such cultural change does occur in orca societies, indicating that orca culture is not static but is capable of evolution. The cultural transmission of prey preferences in orcas suggests a sophisticated level of understanding about appropriate and inappropriate prey. This is not simply a matter of recognizing what is good to eat, Orcas appear to hold cultural knowledge about the entire repertoire of creatures in their environment, and their suitability as prey. By this understanding, humans have been classified culturally across all orca populations as not appropriate prey, perhaps because humans are acoustically distinctive, perhaps because early orca-human encounters established this pattern, or perhaps because of some other reason we can only speculate about. The cultural knowledge system of orcas thus provides a powerful mechanism for explaining why orcas never hunt humans. Cultural transmission across generations, guided by experienced orcas including matriarchal leaders, ensures that young orcas learn what creatures to hunt and which not to hunt. The learning of these distinctions is as fundamental to orca development as learning hunting technique itself. And in the case of humans, the cultural knowledge of all orca populations appears to be consistent. Humans are not appropriate prey. Section 5. Emotional sophistication and empathy. Beyond the sophisticated cognition and cultural knowledge that characterize orcas, there exists another dimension of orca nature that may be equally important in explaining why orcas never hunt humans: emotional sophistication and the capacity for empathy. If orcas are capable of emotional experiences comparable to those of humans, and if orcas are capable of empathizing with other beings, then the refusal to hunt humans takes on additional significance. The evidence for emotional sophistication in orcas is substantial and multifaceted. Behavioral observations over decades of orca research have documented emotional behaviors in wild orcas that suggest rich emotional lives. Most poignantly, orcas have been observed mourning the deaths of pod members, displaying behaviors that appear to serve no function other than to express grief. The most famous documented case of orca mourning occurred in the summer of 2018, when an adult female orca, identified by researchers as J35, now called Tahlequah, lost her newborn calf shortly after birth. Instead of allowing the deceased calf to sink to the ocean floor, as is typical when calves die, J35 repeatedly brought the dead calf to the surface, appearing to support it or cradle it in her mouth. She maintained this behavior for days, carrying her dead calf across miles of ocean, periodically pushing it to the surface, and showing reluctance to leave it even as other pod members attempted to console her. The behavior served no obvious practical function. The dead calf could not be saved, the mother could not eat it as a food source. Yet J35 persisted in her behavior for approximately 2 weeks, refusing to give up her dead offspring. During this time, other orcas in the pod appeared to make adjustments to accommodate her grief. They appeared to remain close to her, and in some cases, other orcas appeared to assist in the task of bringing the calf to the surface, essentially grieving alongside the mother. Eventually, J35 released her dead calf and resumed normal behavior, including feeding. The incident ended, but the significance of the behavior remains. What J35 displayed appeared to be genuine mourning, an emotional response to loss that extended across days and involved behaviors that served only to express emotion and maintain connection with the deceased. This mourning behavior is not unique to J35. Other cases of orca mothers mourning dead calves have been documented by researchers. In each case, the mother orca displays reluctance to abandon the dead calf, carrying it or remaining with it for extended periods, engaging in behaviors that appear driven by emotion rather than by practical survival need. Beyond mourning of offspring, orcas have been documented displaying apparent grief at the loss of other pod members. When an orca dies, other pod members may remain with the body, vocalizing as if calling to the deceased individual. The sounds produced during these periods appear to differ from normal social vocalizations, suggesting that the emotional context of the vocalization is recognized and expressed through distinct acoustic patterns. The existence of such mourning behavior in orcas indicates emotional sophistication that goes beyond simple reactivity to stimuli. Mourning appears to involve the holding of memories, the recognition of loss, and the expression of emotional distress tied to that loss. An animal that can grieve has emotional capacities that extend beyond immediate survival needs. An animal that can feel grief over the loss of another individual likely possesses the emotional capacity to understand the emotional significance of other beings' existence. Evidence for empathy in orcas appears in several contexts. Researchers have documented behavior suggesting that orcas are responsive to the emotional states of other individuals. When one orca is injured or distressed, other orcas appear to recognize this state and respond with what appear to be consoling behaviors. In one documented case, an orca with a serious wound to its tail fin was observed swimming more slowly than usual. Other orcas in the pod matched their swimming speed to that of the injured individual, remaining close to it, and displaying what appeared to be protective behavior. Such responsiveness to the emotional or physical state of other individuals suggests empathetic recognition. The orcas observing the injured individual appeared to recognize its distress and to accommodate their behavior accordingly. This accommodation is not explained by any obvious group advantage to slowing down or staying close to an injured individual. Rather, it appears to reflect emotional responsiveness and what we might call empathetic concern. Orcas in research settings have also displayed apparent empathy toward researchers and toward humans more broadly. Orcas in human care settings have been documented demonstrating apparent interest in and attention to humans, displaying behaviors that appear designed to interact with or engage humans. While such behaviors in captivity require careful interpretation, they may reflect learned associations with food rewards or may reflect the abnormal stress of captivity. They do suggest a capacity for social engagement across species boundaries. The neurological basis for empathy, as discussed earlier, appears to be present in orca brains. The presence of spindle neurons, the organization of orca emotional centers, and the expansion of orca social cognition centers all provide the neurological infrastructure for empathetic responses. An orca's brain is organized in ways that would support the development of empathetic understanding. What does empathy mean for the question of hunting humans? If an orca is capable of empathizing with other orcas, can it extend such empathy to other creatures, including humans? The evidence suggests that orcas may indeed have the capacity for broader empathy. In the ocean, orcas have regular contact with other marine mammal species, seals, sea lions, whales, and dolphins. If empathy were extended to all creatures that orcas encounter, hunting would be complicated by emotional responsiveness to the potential prey's distress. Yet orcas clearly do hunt seals and sea lions, suggesting that empathy is either not extended to prey animals or is overcome by hunger and learned hunting culture. This apparent limitation of empathy aligns with observations from other empathetic species. Humans, who possess sophisticated empathy, nevertheless hunt and eat other animals despite understanding their capacity to suffer. Humans manage this apparent contradiction through cultural and psychological mechanisms that allow for hunting and eating while maintaining empathy in other contexts. Similarly, orcas might extend empathy to social companions within their pod and perhaps to other orcas, while maintaining the hunting of prey animals through cultural definitions of what is appropriate prey. The cultural knowledge that certain animals are food and others are not provides a framework through which empathetic responses might be mediated. Humans, however, might occupy a unique position in orca cultural understanding. Humans are not regularly consumed. Humans have never been killed by orcas in the wild as far as documented history reveals. Without cultural precedent for hunting humans, and without the taste or nutritional need for human meat, the cultural knowledge of orca populations may categorize humans as fundamentally different, either prey nor podmate, but something else entirely. Furthermore, if empathy is triggered by certain cues, by particular vocalizations, by specific behavioral patterns, by certain acoustic signatures, then humans might display cues that trigger empathetic responses more readily than seals or other prey animals. The elaborate vocalizations of humans, our apparent emotional expressiveness, our behavioral patterns, these might be recognized by orcas as indicators of an intelligent, emotionally complex being worthy of empathetic concern rather than predatory aggression. The emotionality of orcas, visible in their mourning behaviors and their apparent concern for injured pod members, suggests that they possess emotional systems responsive to suffering and loss. An orca that encounters a human and recognizes that human as an intelligent, emotionally complex being might be triggered toward empathetic response rather than predatory response. Additionally, the sophistication of orca emotional life suggests that orcas likely experience emotions beyond simple predatory drive. Orcas appear to experience play, to find pleasure in social interaction, to display affection toward pod members. These positive emotional experiences are not reducible to survival-related behaviors. They appear to involve sophisticated emotional responses to social interaction and to life itself. An orca that has spent its life in relationships of affection and social bonding, that has experienced mourning and grief, that has demonstrated concern for injured pod members, is not a creature solely driven by predatory impulse. When such an orca encounters a human, it would do so with a mind capable of complex emotional response. The human would not simply trigger predatory responses. The human would be perceived as another subject with its own experience, its own emotions, its own existence. This emotional recognition might be sufficient to preclude hunting. An orca that recognizes a human as another being with emotional reality and subjective experience might choose not to hunt, not from inability but from empathetic unwillingness. The cultural knowledge that humans are not appropriate prey would be reinforced by emotional responsiveness, a recognition of the human as a being deserving of the empathy that orcas extend to other orcas and possibly to other members of their social world. The emotional sophistication of orcas thus provides another layer of explanation for why orcas never hunt humans. Beyond the practical considerations of echolocation distinguishing human physiology, beyond the cultural knowledge that defines appropriate prey, there exists an emotional dimension to orca nature that may preclude the killing and consumption of a being recognized as emotionally complex and deserving of empathetic concern. Section 6. The comparison with captivity. When orca behavior changes to fully understand why wild orcas never hunt humans, we must examine what happens when orcas are removed from the wild and placed in captivity. The striking contrast between the behavior of wild orcas and the behavior of captive orcas provides powerful evidence about the role of environment, social structure, and psychological well-being in shaping orca behavior. Orcas in captivity have, in several documented cases, killed humans. Most famously, a captive male orca named Tilikum was involved in the deaths of 3 people during his lifetime in captivity. These deaths occur not because orcas inherently have a capacity to hunt humans that they voluntarily suppress in the wild, but rather because captivity creates psychological conditions that can drive orcas to behavior radically different from anything observed in wild populations. The case of Tilikum deserves examination in detail, not to sensationalize it, but to understand what factors led to these tragic outcomes and what they reveal about the difference between wild and captive orcas. Tilikum was captured from the wild in 1983, when he was approximately 2 years old, from an Icelandic orca population. His capture separated him from his mother and his pod, removing him from the social structure and family relationships that would have characterized his early development. Tilikum spent his first years in captivity in facilities that, by modern standards, would be considered severely inadequate for an animal of his size and social needs. He was housed in tanks far too small for an animal capable of swimming dozens of miles per day in the ocean. He was separated from other orcas, or housed with orcas he did not have family relationships with, violating the strong family-based social structure that characterizes wild orca populations. During his time in various facilities, Tilikum was involved in the death of a trainer named Kelty Byrne in 1991, when he was approximately 10 years old. The circumstances of this death involved the trainer falling into the tank and Tilikum, along with other orcas, pulling the trainer underwater. The incident was initially attributed to accident or mistake, and Tilikum was not held responsible. However, subsequent analysis of the incident, combined with observations of Tilikum's behavior, suggested that the incident involved aggression rather than accident. After this first death, Tilikum remained in captivity, continuing to live in severely restricted conditions. He was used in breeding programs to produce offspring that would perform in marine parks. He was subjected to training regimens that involved food deprivation and control, working with human trainers in close proximity despite having demonstrated what appeared to be aggressive tendencies. In 2010, Tilikum killed a trainer named Dawn Brancho by dragging her underwater and drowning her. This death occurred during a performance interaction in which Brancho was in direct physical contact with Tilikum. Eyewitnesses and trainers reported that Tilikum appeared to deliberately grab Brancho and pull her into the water. The death was investigated, and the circumstances indicated that this was not an accident but an act of apparent aggression by Tilikum. Subsequent investigation into this incident and Tilikum's history led to examination of a third death, In 1999, a trainee named Daniel Dukes, who had hidden in the marine park after closing and entered Tillicum's tank, was killed by Tillicum. While this third incident involved someone who voluntarily entered Tillicum's tank, rather than a trainer in the normal course of work, it nevertheless represented another death directly caused by Tillicum. 3 deaths caused by a single orca in captivity is significant. Yet it is important to note that Tillicum's violent behavior appears to have been directed specifically at humans, and at human trainers in particular. Tillicum was not killing other orcas. He was not predatory in the sense of treating humans as food. Rather, his behavior appeared to reflect aggression, frustration, or some other form of violence toward humans. What accounts for this contrast between Tillicum's violent behavior toward humans and the absolute absence of such behavior in wild orcas? The answer appears to lie in the psychological effects of captivity on orcas, the disruption of normal social structure, the stress of living in inadequate conditions, and the possible development of psychological pathology in response to confinement. The condition that has been identified in captive wild animals, characterized by the development of abnormal behaviors in response to psychological distress, is called zoochosis. Zoochosis involves the development of repetitive, stereotypic behaviors that serve no apparent function and that are not seen in wild animals. Behaviors like pacing back and forth repeatedly, bobbing the head up and down, or engaging in self-injurious behavior. Zoochosis develops in response to extreme psychological stress and represents a form of psychological dysfunction. Tillicum exhibited evidence of zoochotic behavior during his years in captivity. He was observed engaging in repetitive behaviors, and his overall demeanor appeared to reflect psychological distress. Marine mammal veterinarians and behavioral specialists have suggested that Tillicum's violent attacks on humans may have represented manifestations of severe psychological stress and behavioral dysfunction resulting from the abnormal environment of captivity. More broadly, orcas in captivity have displayed behaviors consistent with severe psychological distress. Captive orcas develop skin conditions associated with stress. They engage in repetitive behaviors. They display evidence of depression and lethargy. They die younger than wild orcas, despite access to medical care and regular feeding. The lifespan disadvantage of captive orcas compared to wild orcas is striking. While wild orcas commonly live decades and may live into their 90s, captive orcas typically die in their 30s or 40s, years before their wild counterparts. The violence that some captive orcas have displayed toward humans appears to be an expression of this profound psychological distress. Orcas in captivity are social creatures separated from their natural social groups. They are intelligent creatures confined to spaces far too small for their intelligence and activity needs. They are apex predators confined to swimming in circles in artificial pools. The psychological toll of such conditions is severe. Furthermore, the training methods used with captive orcas often involved food deprivation, control, and coercion. Trainers would withhold food to ensure compliance with performance behaviors, essentially starving orcas in order to make them perform tricks for audiences. This deliberate infliction of suffering, combined with the already severe stress of captivity, created conditions of profound psychological distress. Under these conditions of extreme stress and dysfunction, orcas that would never hunt humans in the wild displayed aggression toward human trainers. The violence appears to have been a manifestation of psychological breakdown rather than an expression of normal predatory behavior. The orca was not hunting, the orca was reacting to an intolerable situation with aggression. This contrast between wild and captive orcas reveals something crucial. The refusal of wild orcas to hunt humans is not an artifact of their inability to do so, but rather a reflection of their normal psychology, their normal social structure, their normal relationship to their environment, and their normal cognitive understanding of appropriate prey. Remove an orca from these normal conditions, subject it to extreme stress and psychological dysfunction, and its behavior can change radically. Moreover, the behavior of captive orcas suggests that when orcas do display violence toward humans, it is not an expression of normal predatory behavior but rather an expression of dysfunction and distress. The captive orca attacking a trainer is not following its natural instincts as a predator. It is displaying aggression in response to an intolerably abnormal situation. The contrast between wild and captive orcas also reveals that the factors preventing predation on humans in the wild are not simply biological constraints, but are active aspects of orca behavior and psychology. A wild orca chooses not to hunt humans because of its understanding of appropriate prey, its cultural knowledge, its emotional nature, and its normal psychological state. In the wild, with proper social structure and environment, orcas simply do not display the violent aggression toward humans that traumatized captive orcas sometimes display. The cases of captive orcas killing humans have been interpreted by some as evidence that orcas are dangerous predators inherently capable of turning on humans. This interpretation misses the crucial point. The violence displayed by captive orcas is not an expression of normal orca predatory nature but rather an aberration resulting from the abnormal conditions of captivity. The fact that these incidents occurred only in captivity, and never in the wild despite thousands of years of human-orca interaction, strongly supports the interpretation that the violence was a result of captivity-induced pathology rather than an expression of normal orca predatory drives. Section 7. The cultural knowledge of prey. Learned versus instinctive predation. The distinction between learned and instinctive predatory behavior in orcas is central to understanding why they never hunt humans in the wild. Most predators rely heavily on instinctive behavioral patterns, innate programming that emerges when appropriate stimuli are encountered. A tiger presented with prey does not need to learn to hunt. The predatory response emerges instinctively from the tiger's neurobiology. A shark smelling blood in the water experiences an automatic feeding response that is largely not learned. Orcas, by contrast, operate under a system in which predatory behavior is largely learned. Young orcas are not born knowing what to hunt, or how to hunt it. They must be taught by experienced orcas through observation and participation. This reliance on learned behavior, rather than instinct, means that what orcas hunt depends on what they have learned, not on what they are innately driven to hunt. This is not to say that orcas have no instinctive predatory drives whatsoever. An orca certainly possesses innate behavioral patterns that predispose it toward hunting and killing prey. But the specific expression of these predatory drives, what animals are hunted, how they are hunted, when hunting occurs, is heavily shaped by learned behavior and cultural knowledge rather than being determined purely by instinct. The importance of this distinction becomes clear when we consider what happens when young orcas learn to hunt. When a young orca first participates in a hunt, it is not driven by an instinctive recognition of prey. Rather, it learns by watching other orcas hunt that particular animals are prey, and it learns the techniques by which prey is captured. As the young orca practices hunting, it refines its skills and integrates the hunting behavior into its own behavioral repertoire. Over time, hunting becomes habitual and automatic, but its foundation is learned rather than instinctive. The consequences of this learned basis for predation are profound. An animal's diet is not fixed by instinct but is flexible and capable of change based on learning. Different orca populations learn to hunt different prey because they are taught different prey by the orcas that raise them. An orca born and raised in a population hunting salmon will hunt salmon because that is what it learned. An orca from a population hunting marine mammals will hunt marine mammals because that is what it learned. Humans have never been part of the learned diet of any orca population, as far as historical records reveal. Therefore, young orcas have never been taught to hunt humans, and the cultural knowledge of what constitutes prey in any orca population does not include humans. Without having been taught to hunt humans, and without the cultural tradition that would perpetuate such hunting across generations, orcas simply do not hunt humans. This learned basis for predation stands in contrast to the predatory behavior of many other large marine predators. Great white sharks, for instance, appear to have more instinctive predatory patterns. A shark will attack humans occasionally, apparently mistaking them for seals or other prey or simply responding to stimuli that trigger feeding behavior. The shark's predatory behavior is not learned from other sharks in the same way that orca predatory behavior is learned. A shark attacking a human is not violating learned cultural knowledge, but is responding to innate predatory triggers. Orcas, by contrast, would never hunt humans because hunting humans is not part of what they have learned to hunt, and the cognitive sophistication of orcas allows them to distinguish between creatures that are appropriate prey and creatures that are not. An orca is not simply responding to stimuli, An orca is making a decision about what to hunt based on learned knowledge and cognitive assessment. The role of the matriarch in maintaining this learned, cultural knowledge about appropriate prey cannot be overemphasized. The matriarch is the keeper of the prey knowledge, the individual that remembers where salmon run, where seals haul out, where whales migrate. The matriarch teaches younger orcas where prey can be found and how prey should be hunted. The matriarch's knowledge defines what prey the pod hunts. By extension, the matriarch's understanding of what is and is not appropriate prey is transmitted to younger orcas through her example and possibly through active prevention of inappropriate hunting. If a young orca were to attempt to hunt something that is not part of the cultural diet of the pod, the matriarch or other experienced orcas might intervene to prevent the hunt. Such intervention would communicate to the young orca that such hunting is not appropriate for this population. We have no records of orcas attempting to hunt humans and being prevented from doing so. The absence of such records could indicate that orcas have simply never developed an impulse to hunt humans, or it could indicate that if such an impulse ever did emerge, it was successfully prevented by older, more experienced orcas. Either way, the result is the same. Humans are not hunted because they are not part of what orcas learn to hunt. The distinction between learned and instinctive predation also explains why orcas might be dangerous under exceptional circumstances, such as in the case of captive orcas under severe psychological stress, while remaining safe in their natural environment. The normal learning and cultural transmission that shape orca predatory behavior do not occur in captivity in the same way. A captive orca denied normal social structure, normal environmental conditions, and normal behavioral expression may lack the normal learned knowledge that guides wild orcas. A captive orca under severe psychological stress may display predatory or aggressive behavior that a psychologically normal wild orca would not display. This learned basis for orca predation represents an evolutionary development that may have been favored by selection pressures in the complex ocean environment. The flexibility to hunt different prey in different environments, based on learned behavior and cultural knowledge, may provide an advantage over fixed, instinctive predatory patterns. An orca population can adapt to changing prey availability or environmental conditions by learning new hunting techniques or switching prey if necessary. This same flexibility, combined with orca intelligence and cognitive sophistication, also means that orcas can learn not to hunt certain creatures. The cultural knowledge that certain animals are not appropriate prey is just as much a part of orca predatory behavior as the knowledge of what is appropriate prey. Humans simply fall into the category of creatures that orcas, across all populations, have learned not to hunt. The cultural knowledge of prey preferences also interacts with the acoustic distinctiveness of different animals to further reinforce these prey distinctions. An orca that has learned to hunt seals learns the acoustic signature of seals. An orca that hunts salmon learns the acoustic signature of salmon. When an orca encounters a human, the acoustic signature is distinctly different from any learned prey signature. This acoustic novelty, combined with the absence of cultural knowledge about hunting humans, means that humans are simply not recognized as appropriate prey. Section 8. Interactions in the Wild. A history of peace. To understand why orcas never hunt humans, we must examine the actual history of orca-human interaction in the wild. This history, spanning centuries of recorded observation and longer in the oral traditions of indigenous peoples, contains no credible accounts of orcas hunting humans. This absence is not a recent phenomenon nor a matter of luck or chance, but rather appears to be a consistent pattern extending back as far as records allow us to examine. Indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, whose cultures have existed in close proximity to orca populations for thousands of years, have extensive traditions regarding orcas. In the oral traditions of the First Nations peoples of the region, orcas appear as powerful and intelligent beings worthy of respect. In some cultural traditions, orcas are understood as persons, as beings with their own societies, their own laws, and their own rights. Orcas are characterized in these traditions as fierce hunters, certainly, but they are not characterized as hunters of humans. The respect accorded to orcas in indigenous traditions of the Pacific Northwest appears to be based on observation and interaction extending across countless generations. These peoples lived in intimate contact with ocean ecosystems and with orca populations, harvesting marine resources and observing orca behavior directly. The traditions that emerged from this extended interaction did not include a narrative of orcas as a threat to human life, despite the obvious power of these animals. European exploration and early contact with orca populations did result in some accounts of orcas as dangerous creatures. Early European whalers, encountering orcas hunting whales, occasionally described orcas as fearsome predators that attacked humans or boats. Some of these early accounts appear to have been exaggerated for effect. Others were based on misinterpretation of orca behavior. The early European perception of orcas was filtered through the prejudices and misunderstandings of people unfamiliar with the ocean environment and with marine mammals. What is notable is that even in these early accounts, actual predation of humans by orcas is not recorded. The accounts describe orcas as dangerous, as powerful, as capable of attacking boats and threatening human safety, but they do not describe successful predation of humans. This distinction is important. A creature that is dangerous is not necessarily one that hunts humans. As scientific observation of orcas increased in the 20th century, researchers noted the absence of predation of humans in the wild. Researchers studying wild orca populations, observing thousands of hours of orca behavior, documented the specific prey that different populations hunted. Salmon hunting populations were observed hunting salmon. Marine mammal hunting populations were observed hunting seals, sea lions, whales, and dolphins. But no researchers reported observing attacks on humans in the wild, despite the many opportunities for such observation that modern research provided. Tourist industries have grown up around whale watching, including orca watching, particularly in regions with resident or regular orca populations. Thousands of people per year board boats and enter the ocean environment with wild orcas, placing themselves in close proximity to these apex predators. The whale watching industry would be fundamentally different if orcas posed a threat to humans, yet it continues without major incidents or precautions against orca predation. The absence of predation on humans by wild orcas across the documented history of human-orca interaction is striking not because it is surprising, but because it is consistent and uniform. No known wild orca population hunts humans. No geographic region reports regular or occasional orca predation on humans. No individual orcas, across the thousands of wild orcas that have lived and died during the period of modern scientific observation, have been documented hunting humans. This consistency suggests that something fundamental about orca behavior, orca cognition, or orca culture prevents predation on humans across all populations. It is not a matter of circumstance or luck that humans have never been hunted by orcas. Rather, it appears to be a characteristic of orca behavior that transcends geographic populations and individual variation. When humans do encounter orcas in the wild, the encounters are typically peacefully resolved. Humans swimming in water with orcas have not been attacked. Divers have observed orcas at close range without being harmed. Researchers boarding boats to study wild orcas have conducted observations for decades without experiencing orca attacks. The general pattern of orca-human interaction in the wild is characterized by the absence of violence or predation. In some cases, wild orcas have appeared to display curiosity toward humans or boats. They have approached boats, investigated them, and then moved on. These approach behaviors may reflect curiosity about novel objects or beings in the orca's environment. They do not suggest predatory intent. If they did, human researchers and whale watchers would face constant threat. The historical record also documents cases in which humans have harmed orcas, through whaling, through collection for captivity, through pollution and habitat degradation, without orcas responding with attempts to hunt humans in revenge or retaliation. This asymmetry is notable. Humans have killed orcas, captured them, harmed them, yet orcas have never responded by hunting humans. The peace appears to be mutual, or at least maintained by orca restraint despite human aggression. The absence of predation in the wild stands in stark contrast to the behavior of captive orcas in some cases. This contrast reinforces the interpretation that wild orcas choose not to hunt humans as a matter of normal behavior, while captive orcas, under conditions of psychological distress, may display atypical behavior including aggression toward humans. The history of peaceful coexistence between humans and wild orcas suggests that some mechanism, cultural knowledge, learned behavior, cognitive decision-making, emotional recognition, or some combination of these, prevents hunting of humans across all orca populations. This mechanism is so consistent and so universal that it appears to be fundamental to orca nature and orca behavior. The question of why orcas never hunt humans cannot be fully answered without examining the ecological context in which orcas evolved and within which they make their hunting decisions. Orcas did not evolve as apex predators in an environment where humans were abundant prey. Rather, orcas evolved in ocean ecosystems where humans were absent or peripheral, and where other prey animals formed the bulk of their diet. The ecological niche that orcas occupy, and the prey base that sustains them, has shaped orca predatory behavior in ways that make humans fundamentally incompatible with orca prey preferences. The evolution of orca predatory specialization appears to have occurred over millions of years, with orcas developing refined capabilities for hunting specific marine animals. Different orca lineages specialized in hunting different prey, developing distinct anatomical, behavioral, and cultural specializations. This specialization represents an evolutionary response to ecological opportunity, different prey sources that could sustain orca populations if effectively exploited. The prey base available to orcas in different ocean regions is remarkably diverse. In the Pacific Northwest, orca populations specialized in either salmon or marine mammals because these prey sources were abundant and reliable. In the North Atlantic, orca populations developed specializations for hunting whales, seals, and fish. In Antarctic waters, orcas developed specializations for hunting penguins, seals, and whales. In each case, the prey that orcas hunt reflects the ecological opportunity available in their particular region and the evolutionary and cultural refinement of hunting techniques for specific prey. Humans, by contrast, were never abundant in the ocean environment during the period of orca evolution and specialization. Humans are terrestrial animals that enter the ocean only incidentally or by choice. Human abundance in marine environments is a recent phenomenon, spanning at most a few hundred years in most regions, with larger-scale human ocean occupation occurring only in the last century or two. This means that orcas evolved their predatory specializations in the complete absence of humans as a significant component of the marine environment. The absence of humans from the marine food web during orca evolution meant that there was no selective pressure favoring the development of hunting techniques for humans, or the development of cultural knowledge about hunting humans. Evolution does not produce capabilities that are not needed. The absence of humans from the orca's ecological niche meant that predatory specializations for hunting humans never developed. Furthermore, humans would be an inefficient prey source for orcas even if they were regularly encountered. An orca gains nutritional value from prey in proportion to the effort required to capture and consume that prey. Seals and sea lions, for instance, provide substantial fat and blubber that orcas can efficiently consume, and that provides significant caloric value. The ratio of energy expended in hunting to energy gained from consumption, the cost-benefit calculation of foraging ecology, favors hunting seals and sea lions over many other potential prey. Humans, by contrast, are comparatively lean creatures with little blubber or fat reserves relative to marine mammals. A human killed by an orca would provide minimal nutritional value compared to a seal or sea lion. The energy cost of hunting a human, the pursuit, the attack, the capture, would likely exceed the nutritional gain. In ecological terms, humans are poor-quality prey for orcas. This ecological consideration may not be consciously calculated by individual orcas, but it appears to be encoded in the behavioral patterns and cultural knowledge of orca populations. Orca populations hunt prey that provides adequate nutritional value. They do not hunt creatures that would provide insufficient nutrition relative to the effort expended. Humans, as poor-quality prey from a nutritional perspective, would not be attractive targets even if orcas were inclined to hunt them. The abundance and accessibility of preferred prey also influences orca hunting behavior. In regions where salmon run in abundance during certain seasons, salmon hunting orcas focus on salmon during those seasons. In regions where seals are abundant, marine mammal hunting orcas focus on seals. The availability of preferred, Efficient prey reduces the pressure to hunt less preferred prey. Humans, being rare in marine environments and inaccessible for most of the year, would never become a preferred prey even if they were not culturally defined as inappropriate prey. The ecological role that orcas occupy as apex predators also provides insight into their prey selection. Apex predators are not indiscriminate hunters. They typically specialize in hunting prey that fits their predatory capabilities and their ecological niche. A lion specializes in hunting ungulates. It does not hunt every creature it encounters. A crocodile specializes in hunting fish and aquatic mammals. It does not hunt every creature in the river. Similarly, orcas specialize in hunting marine prey that fits their capabilities and their ecological niche. Humans, existing primarily on land and entering the ocean only occasionally, simply do not fit into the ecological niche that orcas occupy. The specialization of orca populations into distinct ecotypes hunting different prey reflects ecological specialization and the pursuit of efficiency within particular ecological niches. As orca populations became established in particular regions and began specializing in particular prey, the specialization became reinforced through cultural transmission and through the accumulation of learned knowledge about particular prey. A population hunting salmon became increasingly efficient at hunting salmon, refining techniques and accumulating knowledge across generations. A population hunting marine mammals became increasingly efficient at hunting marine mammals. This process of ecological specialization and cultural refinement created prey preferences that became deeply ingrained in each population. An orca born into a salmon hunting population learns to hunt salmon with remarkable efficiency, sometimes achieving hunting success rates exceeding 90%. An orca born into a marine mammal hunting population learns to hunt seals and sea lions with similar efficiency. But these same orcas do not switch prey preferences. A salmon hunting orca does not hunt seals even when seals are abundant, and a marine mammal hunting orca does not hunt salmon even when salmon are abundant. This fidelity to learned prey preferences, despite the availability of other potential prey, demonstrates the strength of cultural and learned determinants of orca predatory behavior. What an orca hunts is determined not by what is available or optimal, but by what the orca has learned through cultural transmission. This learning is so powerful and so dominant that orcas maintain their prey preferences across years and decades, passing these preferences to offspring through cultural transmission. If humans have never been part of the learned prey preferences of any orca population, then the ecological and cultural forces that shape orca predatory behavior would never create the conditions for hunting humans. The ecological niche that orcas occupy, the prey base that sustains them, and the cultural knowledge that guides their predatory decisions all converge toward the exclusion of humans from the orca diet. The temporal and spatial patterns of orca-human overlap also contribute to the absence of predation. Orcas are marine animals spending their lives in the ocean. Humans are primarily terrestrial animals. The overlap between orca habitat and human habitat is limited in space and time. Humans enter the ocean environment only occasionally and in limited numbers compared to the abundance of marine prey animals. This limited overlap means that encounters between orcas and humans are rare relative to encounters between orcas and their normal prey. Furthermore, human presence in the ocean tends to be concentrated in shallow coastal waters where visibility is better and where safety from ocean predators is more readily achieved. Many orca populations, particularly those hunting marine mammals, may spend substantial time in deeper waters where human presence is minimal. The spatial separation between orca populations and human populations further reduces encounter rates and prevents the development of human hunting as a culturally established prey preference. The recent increase in human ocean use, through commercial fishing, tourism, recreation, and transportation, has increased human-orca overlap in some regions. Yet even with increased overlap and increased opportunities for encounters, predation of humans has not increased. This strongly suggests that the absence of predation is not simply a matter of limited encounter rates, but rather reflects a fundamental aspect of orca behavior and decision-making that prevents predation even when humans are encountered. Section 10. Specific prey preferences and hunting strategies across orca populations. To fully understand why orcas never hunt humans, it is instructive to examine in detail the specific prey preferences and hunting strategies of different orca populations. These examples demonstrate the remarkable diversity of orca predatory behavior and the specificity with which different populations have specialized in hunting particular prey. This specificity reveals how learned, cultural factors determine what orcas hunt, and conversely, how the absence of humans from orca cultural diet across all populations results in the absence of human hunting. The resident orcas of the Pacific Northwest provide perhaps the most thoroughly studied example of orca prey preferences. These orcas, particularly the northern residents living in British Columbia waters and the southern residents living in Puget Sound, have specialized almost exclusively in hunting salmon, particularly Chinook salmon. The degree of specialization is remarkable. Some populations have become so specialized that they rarely, if ever, hunt other prey species even when alternatives are available. Chinook salmon are large fish, sometimes exceeding 50 pounds in weight. Hunting these salmon requires sophisticated techniques. The salmon-hunting orcas have developed a coordinated hunting strategy in which multiple orcas work together to herd schools of salmon into tight balls, making them easier to capture. Individual orcas then break away from the herding formation to pursue and capture salmon. A successful salmon hunt requires speed, precision, and coordinated effort among multiple pod members. The salmon runs that sustain these populations occur at particular times of year and in particular geographic locations. The resident orcas have accumulated extensive cultural knowledge about when and where salmon runs occur, knowledge that is maintained and transmitted by the matriarchs of each pod. This knowledge includes the specific rivers and waterways where salmon spawn, the times of year when salmon runs peak, and the migration routes that salmon take. This geographic and temporal knowledge is essential for the survival of the population, and it is maintained across generations through cultural transmission. The resident orcas have become so specialized in salmon hunting that they have apparently lost the ability or inclination to hunt marine mammals, their other potential prey source. Even when pinnipeds, seals and sea lions are abundant in the same waters where resident orcas hunt, the residents do not hunt them. This behavioral specialization extends to the extent that some researchers have noted that resident orcas appear to have fundamentally different behavioral patterns, vocal traditions, and even possibly genetic specializations compared to mammal-hunting orcas in the same region. In contrast to the resident salmon specialists, the transient orcas, sometimes called Bigg's killer whales, in the same Pacific Northwest region have specialized in hunting marine mammals. These orcas hunt seals, sea lions, sea otters, and occasionally whales. The hunting strategies for marine mammals differ fundamentally from salmon hunting strategies. Marine mammal hunting requires stalking, pursuit, and often coordinated predation involving multiple orcas working together to overwhelm a prey animal that may actively resist capture. Transient orcas hunting pinnipeds employ strategies involving coordinated approaches to haulouts where seals and sea lions rest. Multiple orcas may position themselves to prevent escape routes, then coordinate attacks to separate individual prey animals from the group. Once separated, a prey animal is pursued at high speed, with the orcas attempting to exhaust it through prolonged chase. The hunt may end with one orca grabbing the prey animal, while others support or assist. The transient orcas have developed sophisticated knowledge about where pinnipeds haul out, when they are most accessible, and how best to approach them. Importantly, transient orcas in the same waters where salmon runs occur do not hunt salmon. Despite the abundance of Chinook salmon and other salmon species in their habitat, the transient orcas do not exploit this food source. The salmon are present, the transient orcas have the sensory and cognitive capabilities to hunt them, yet they do not hunt them. This refusal to hunt salmon despite their presence and availability demonstrates the power of cultural prey preferences in determining orca diet. The transient orcas have also not been observed hunting humans, despite their predatory specialization on large marine mammals. The predatory capability is certainly present. The motivation and opportunity have occurred with some frequency as human populations have expanded their ocean use. Yet the hunting does not occur. The cultural knowledge of transient orcas apparently includes an understanding that humans, like salmon for resident orcas, are not appropriate prey. In other regions of the world, additional orca ecotypes have developed specialized prey preferences. In the North Atlantic, some orca populations have specialized in hunting whales, including species such as the North Atlantic right whale. These whale-hunting orcas have developed sophisticated strategies for attacking and killing whales many times their own weight. A coordinated attack by a pod of orcas on a whale involves precise positioning, timing, and execution. The orcas work together to attack the whale's vulnerable areas, causing injury and exhaustion until the whale succumbs to the attacks. This whale-hunting specialization demonstrates the remarkable degree to which orca predatory behavior can become specialized. Orcas hunting whales do not hunt seals or fish, they hunt whales. The specialization is so pronounced that some researchers have suggested that whale-hunting orcas may have diverged genetically from other orca populations, developing specializations in musculature, size, or behavioral programming that support whale hunting. Yet even these powerful whale hunters do not hunt humans. The predatory capability to kill large marine mammals has not been directed toward humans, despite millennia of human-orca overlap. The whale-hunting orcas have learned to hunt whales specifically. They have not learned to hunt humans despite their obvious capability to do so. In Antarctic waters, orca populations have developed specializations for hunting penguins, seals, and whales. The Antarctic orcas hunting penguins have developed remarkable techniques for hunting these seabirds, including strategies involving the creation of waves to wash penguins off ice floes. These hunting techniques are culturally transmitted and refined across generations, passed from experienced orcas to younger orcas learning to hunt in Antarctic waters. The diversity of prey specializations across orca populations demonstrates several crucial points. First, orca predatory behavior is learned and culturally transmitted rather than instinctively determined. Different populations hunt different prey not because of genetic differences but because of different learned traditions. Second, once a prey specialization develops, it tends to be maintained across generations and across time, creating stable prey preferences that persist even when alternative prey is available. Third, the specificity of prey preferences suggests that what an orca hunts is precisely defined in orca cultural knowledge, not broadly defined as anything that can be killed. The implication of these observations for understanding why orcas never hunt humans is clear. If orcas have developed specific prey preferences for salmon, for seals, for whales, for penguins, then humans simply represent another category of potential prey that has not been incorporated into any orca population's learned diet. The specificity of orca prey preferences suggests that if humans were not learned as appropriate prey in the past, they would not become appropriate prey in the present or future. Furthermore, the observation that orcas maintain their prey preferences even when alternative prey is available suggests that cultural factors are more important than availability or optimal foraging in determining what orcas hunt. Salmon-hunting orcas do not hunt seals even when seals are abundant, indicating that mere availability is not sufficient to motivate hunting. Similarly, mammal-hunting orcas do not hunt salmon even when salmon are abundant. This commitment to culturally learned prey preferences over available alternatives suggests that humans, not culturally learned as appropriate prey, would not be hunted even if humans were more abundant in marine environments. The specificity of orca prey preferences also raises interesting questions about what mechanisms maintain these preferences. How does an orca population maintain a diet of only salmon when other prey is available? How are younger orcas prevented from hunting inappropriate prey? These questions remain active areas of research, but the most plausible answers involve active cultural transmission, possibly including active prevention of inappropriate hunting attempts. Such mechanisms would equally apply to preventing the hunting of humans. Section 11. The decision-making process, recognition, assessment, and choice. To understand why orcas never hunt humans, we must examine the decision-making process through which an orca determines whether a particular creature is appropriate prey. This decision-making process involves multiple stages: recognition of what the creature is, assessment of whether it is appropriate prey, and ultimately a behavioral choice about whether to hunt or to leave it alone. The first stage of this decision-making process is recognition. When an orca encounters another creature, the orca must identify what type of creature it is. This identification is performed primarily through echolocation, as we have discussed, but may also involve visual assessment and other sensory information. The orca creates an acoustic profile of the creature, extracting information about its size, its anatomical composition, its movement patterns, and other distinguishing features. The acoustic profiles of different prey animals are distinct. A seal has a particular acoustic signature that reflects its bone structure, its blubber composition, its muscle mass, and its overall anatomy. A salmon has a distinctly different acoustic signature reflecting its different anatomy. A whale has yet another acoustic signature. Through experience with these prey animals, an orca develops internal representations of the acoustic profiles characteristic of each prey type. When the orca encounters a new creature, it can compare the acoustic profile of that creature to its internal representations, thus identifying what type of creature it is. A human, with its distinctive skeletal anatomy, its air-filled lungs, its particular arrangement of soft tissue and muscle, would produce a distinctive acoustic profile that differs from the profiles of any normal orca prey. An orca that has never heard an echolocation return from a human might initially find the acoustic profile unfamiliar or novel. But an orca with experience observing humans or with acoustic knowledge transmitted from other orcas about human acoustic profiles could readily identify a human as something distinct from normal prey. The acoustic profile of humans has additional distinctive features. Humans produce sounds themselves, vocalizations, movements through the water, the sounds of equipment, or clothing. An orca listening to these sounds might recognize them as indicators of human presence. The distinctive sounds of human speech, the sounds of human movement, the sounds of human equipment, all of these might be acoustically recognized as indicating the presence of humans. Once a creature has been recognized as a particular type, the second stage of decision-making involves assessment. The orca must assess whether the identified creature is appropriate prey. This assessment involves consulting the orca's learned knowledge about what constitutes appropriate prey. Is this creature something that my population hunts? Is this creature something that I have learned to hunt? Is this creature part of my diet? This assessment process draws on multiple sources of information. The orca's personal experience with similar creatures would inform the assessment. The orca's observations of other pod members hunting would inform the assessment. The orca's cultural knowledge about appropriate prey would inform the assessment. The orca's emotional or empathetic responses to the creature might influence the assessment. For creatures that are clearly appropriate prey, this assessment process typically results in a decision to hunt. When a resident orca echolocates a school of salmon, the assessment process likely concludes very rapidly that salmon are indeed appropriate prey, and the decision to hunt follows. When a transient orca echolocates a seal at a haul-out, the assessment likely concludes rapidly that the seal is appropriate prey, and the decision to hunt follows. For creatures that are clearly not appropriate prey, the assessment process likely concludes that the creature is not prey, and the decision not to hunt follows. When an orca echolocates another orca, the assessment concludes that this is a pod mate, or another member of the same species, not prey. The decision not to hunt follows, replaced by behaviors appropriate to encountering another orca. Perhaps vocalization, perhaps investigation, perhaps social interaction. Humans would fall into the category of creatures clearly not appropriate prey, based on their acoustic distinctiveness and their absence from orca cultural diet. An orca's assessment process, comparing the human acoustic profile to learn knowledge about appropriate prey, would likely conclude that humans are not prey. The decision would then be made not to hunt. The third stage of the decision-making process is behavioral execution. Having assessed whether a creature is appropriate prey, the orca must decide how to behave toward it. If the creature is assessed as appropriate prey, the orca may engage in predatory behavior, stalking, pursuit, attack, and killing. If the creature is assessed as not appropriate prey, the orca may ignore it, investigate it curiously, or engage in non-predatory social behavior. For humans, having been assessed as not appropriate prey, the orca would likely engage in non-predatory behaviors. The orca might ignore the human, particularly if the orca is focused on hunting other prey. The orca might investigate the human curiously, using echolocation to examine it more closely and possibly approaching to observe it. The orca might engage in social or communicative behaviors, vocalizing or displaying behaviors that appear designed to interact with or acknowledge the human. None of these non-predatory behavioral responses would result in the hunting of the human. The decision to hunt, having not been made at the assessment stage, would not be executed at the behavioral stage. This decision-making process, operating across all orca populations and across all individual orcas within those populations, results in the consistent outcome that humans are never hunted. Different individuals, in different populations, at different times, all arrive at the same decision: humans are not appropriate prey. The consistency of this decision, operating across generations and across geographic populations, suggests that the process is guided by something fundamental and universal to orca cognition and culture. The sophistication of this decision-making process distinguishes orcas from many other predators. A great white shark, encountering a human, may lack the cognitive sophistication to engage in this kind of multi-stage assessment. The shark may respond to simple stimuli that trigger feeding responses, without the ability to recognize what type of creature it is encountering. An orca, by contrast, possesses the cognitive sophistication to recognize, assess, and decide, making choices about what to hunt based on complex information processing and learned knowledge. This cognitive sophistication allows orcas to be selective predators. An orca is not a creature that kills everything it encounters. An orca hunts specific prey that fits within its learned diet. This selectivity is possible only because of the sophisticated decision-making process we have described. And this same selectivity, applied to humans, results in the universal decision across all orca populations not to hunt humans. The decision not to hunt humans is not a conscious, deliberated choice made by individual orcas. Rather, it emerges from the integration of sensory information, learned knowledge, and behavioral patterns that characterize orca cognition. The decision emerges automatically and reliably when the appropriate conditions are present. When an orca recognizes that a creature is not appropriate prey, the decision not to hunt follows naturally from orca cognition and behavior. Section 12. Individual variation and the possibility of aberrations. While the general pattern across orca populations is the complete absence of hunting of humans, it is worth considering whether individual orcas might occasionally deviate from this pattern, or whether novel hunting behaviors might occasionally emerge before being suppressed by cultural knowledge or social intervention. The existence of individual variation within orca populations and the possibility of novel behaviors emerging raises the question of whether the absence of human hunting is absolute, or merely extremely rare. Individual orcas, like individual humans, display variations in personality, in learned behaviors, and in behavioral preferences. Some orcas appear to be more innovative or experimental in their behavior, others appear more conservative. Some orcas become particularly skilled at particular hunting techniques, others develop different specializations. Within the general cultural norms of a population, individual variation certainly exists. The possibility therefore exists that an individual orca, for various reasons, might attempt to hunt a human despite the cultural norms against doing so. Such an attempt might occur if the orca was exceptionally innovative or aberrant in behavior. It might occur if the orca was psychologically disturbed or suffering from pathology. It might occur if an orca had an unusual experience with humans that led to the development of an aberrant behavior. Yet despite the theoretical possibility of such aberrations, the historical record contains no well-documented cases of wild orcas successfully hunting humans, or even making serious attempts to do so. If aberrations were common or even occasional, we would expect to see documented cases, accounts from early explorers, records from indigenous peoples, reports from modern whale watchers or researchers. The absence of such documented cases, despite thousands of years of human-orca overlap and centuries of careful observation, suggests that if aberrations do occur, they are extraordinarily rare. More likely, the cultural norms against hunting humans are so firmly established, and so powerfully transmitted that individual aberrations are effectively prevented. A young orca attempting to hunt a human might be prevented from doing so by older, more experienced pod members who recognize the behavior as inappropriate. This prevention of inappropriate hunting behaviors would parallel what appears to happen with other culturally inappropriate prey. If a young transient orca attempted to hunt a salmon, we might expect other pod members to prevent or discourage this behavior. Such prevention would enforce cultural norms and ensure that inappropriate prey preferences do not develop in individuals despite their theoretical potential. The fact that such prevention apparently occurs for culturally inappropriate prey suggests that if a young orca attempted to hunt a human, similar prevention might occur. The young orca would learn, through the intervention of older pod members, that hunting humans is not appropriate. The behavior would be suppressed before it could be fully developed or transmitted to other orcas. This possibility of prevention of aberrant behaviors represents another mechanism through which the consistent absence of human hunting is maintained. Even if individual orcas occasionally possessed the inclination or attempted to hunt humans, cultural mechanisms within orca society would suppress such behavior. The collective enforcement of cultural norms against hunting inappropriate prey would extend to prevention of human hunting. The matriarchal structure of orca societies would facilitate such enforcement. A matriarch, as the keeper of cultural knowledge and the leader of the pod, would be in a position to prevent younger orcas from engaging in inappropriate behaviors. The matriarch's authority, derived from age, experience, and knowledge, would allow her to enforce cultural norms through her influence over the behavior of younger pod members. The example of captive orcas is instructive here. In the unnatural environment of captivity, when normal social structure is disrupted and psychological stress is severe, aberrant behaviors emerge that are not seen in wild orcas. The violence displayed by some captive orcas toward humans represents a form of aberrant behavior that deviates from the norms established in wild orca populations. Yet, even with the disruption of captivity, such behaviors are not universal among all captive orcas. They emerge in some individuals, apparently as a result of extreme stress and dysfunction. This suggests that even under extreme conditions of psychological stress, many orcas maintain behavioral patterns that do not involve hunting or aggression toward humans. The behavioral norm against hunting humans is so deeply established that it persists even in the unnatural environment of captivity, at least for most captive orcas most of the time. Only under the most extreme stress do some individuals display aberrant aggression toward humans. The possibility of occasional aberrations in wild populations would not contradict the general pattern that wild orcas do not hunt humans. If aberrations occurred rarely and were suppressed by cultural mechanisms or by the intervention of other pod members, the net result would still be the consistent absence of wild orca predation on humans. The rarity of such potential aberrations, combined with the effectiveness of cultural mechanisms in suppressing them, would result in a historical record devoid of documented wild orca hunting of humans. This possibility also highlights the importance of social structure and psychological well-being in maintaining orca behavior. The cultural norms that prevent hunting of humans are maintained through social structures and through normal psychological functioning. When social structures are disrupted or psychological functioning is severely compromised, these behavioral norms may fail, as exemplified by some captive orca incidents. But in the wild, where social structures are intact and psychological functioning is normal, these norms are reliably maintained. Section 13. Communication between orcas about humans. One fascinating and underexplored aspect of orca behavior is the possibility that orcas communicate with each other about humans. If orcas have classified humans as a specific category of creature, either prey nor predator, but something distinct, this classification might be actively communicated between orcas, reinforced through vocal communication, and transmitted through teaching and social interaction. Orca vocalizations are remarkably complex and varied. Different orca populations have distinct dialects, with specific vocalizations and call patterns that are characteristic of particular pods or population groups. These vocalizations serve multiple functions. They coordinate group behavior, they reinforce social bonds, they provide information about the identity of speakers and the identity of other orcas, and they may transmit information about environmental conditions or the presence of prey. The possibility exists that specific vocalizations or call patterns might be used to communicate about humans. An orca that has encountered humans might produce specific vocalizations that communicate this information to other pod members. The vocalizations might indicate, "Humans are present, humans are in this location, Humans are not prey, or other informational content relevant to human presence. Such communicative transmission of information about humans could facilitate the cultural knowledge that prevents hunting. If orcas regularly communicate about humans, distinguishing them from prey animals and from other creatures in the marine environment, this communication would reinforce the cultural understanding that humans are a specific category of being that should not be hunted. The distinctiveness of human-related vocalizations, if they exist, might be acoustically recognizable to other orcas, allowing for efficient communication about humans. An orca hearing the distinctive human-related vocalization from another orca would immediately understand that humans are present or being discussed. Such efficient communication would allow for rapid dissemination of information about humans throughout a pod and across populations. The transmission of this information to younger orcas would facilitate learning about humans without requiring that each young orca have direct experience with humans. A young orca could learn about humans through the vocalizations of other pod members, through observation of how adults respond to human presence, and through the cultural knowledge transmitted through teaching and social interaction. This learning mechanism would be consistent with how young orcas learn about other categories of creatures and prey animals. The possibility of specific human-related vocalizations remains largely unexplored in orca research. Recording and analyzing orca vocalizations during encounters with humans, or during times when humans are present, could reveal whether distinct vocalizations are produced in response to human presence. Such research could illuminate the communicative dimensions of orca knowledge about humans. Additionally, the reaction of orcas to human vocalizations might provide insights into how orcas perceive and categorize humans. If orcas have developed specific associations between human sounds and human presence, they might produce characteristic responses to these sounds. Research examining orca behavior in response to playback of human vocalizations could explore these associations. The possibility of active communication about humans raises fascinating questions about orca culture and orca understanding. If orcas actively communicate about humans, distinguish them from other creatures, and transmit information about them to younger orcas, this would represent a form of explicit cultural knowledge about humans. The existence of such knowledge would be additional evidence that the absence of human hunting reflects active, deliberate cultural factors rather than chance or circumstance. Section 14. Environmental Threats and the Future of Orca-Human Peace. The documented peace between wild orca populations and humans has persisted for at least as long as humans have interacted with the ocean. This peace has not depended on humans understanding why orcas do not hunt them. For most of human history, humans have been largely ignorant of orca cognition, culture, and decision-making. Rather, the peace has depended on characteristics intrinsic to orca nature and orca behavior. The question now arises, what environmental and social changes might threaten to disrupt this peace in the future? The threats facing wild orca populations in the modern world are numerous and severe. Pollution, particularly in the form of chemical contaminants such as PCBs and heavy metals, accumulates in orca tissues, causing chronic health problems and reproductive dysfunction. Noise pollution, from shipping traffic, military sonar, and other sources, interferes with orca echolocation and communication, disrupting normal behavior and causing physiological stress. Climate change is altering ocean ecosystems, affecting the abundance and distribution of prey animals that orcas depend on for survival. Human fishing practices are depleting prey fish populations, contributing to orca starvation in populations dependent on these fish. Particularly severe is the depletion of salmon populations in the Pacific Northwest, caused by habitat destruction, fishing, and climate change. Southern resident orca populations, whose diet consists almost exclusively of Chinook salmon, have been declining in numbers as salmon populations have crashed. Starvation has been identified as a primary cause of death in some southern resident orcas. The cultural knowledge about salmon runs and salmon hunting locations, maintained by matriarchs across generations, becomes increasingly worthless as the salmon themselves disappear. As orca prey populations decline, orcas may be forced to expand their diet or seek new prey sources. An orca population facing starvation due to depletion of their traditional prey might become more experimental in hunting, potentially targeting new prey species that they would not normally hunt. In such conditions, it is conceivable that an orca population might attempt to hunt humans, or that individual orcas might become more aggressive toward humans. Such a scenario would represent a disruption of the peace between orcas and humans caused by human environmental damage. The peace has been maintained because orcas have had adequate prey and because cultural factors have defined humans as inappropriate prey. But if prey populations collapse sufficiently, and if orcas are driven to starvation and desperation, the behavioral patterns that have characterized wild orcas for millennia might change. Furthermore, the disruption of orca social structure through capture for captivity or through other human interventions could potentially disrupt the cultural transmission that maintains the knowledge about appropriate and inappropriate prey. If matriarchs are removed from populations, if family units are separated, if social disruption is severe, the mechanisms through which cultural knowledge is maintained might fail. Young orcas might not learn appropriate prey preferences if they lack the social context in which to learn them. Additionally, the psychological stress caused by environmental degradation, by pollution, by noise, by food scarcity, might lead to behavioral dysfunction similar to what is seen in captive orcas. An orca population subjected to severe chronic stress might display aberrant behaviors, potentially including increased aggression toward humans. The peace between orcas and humans has been maintained partly through the psychological well-being of orca populations. Severe degradation of their environmental conditions could potentially compromise this well-being and disrupt the behavioral patterns associated with it. The expansion of human ocean use, through commercial fishing, shipping, tourism, and underwater mining, increases the spatial overlap between orcas and humans. As humans encroach increasingly on orca habitat and feeding grounds, encounters between orcas and humans become more frequent. While this increased interaction has not led to increased predation in the past, the potential for conflict or misunderstanding increases as overlap increases. Moreover, the expansion of military activities in the ocean, including sonar testing and other military exercises, poses threats to orca populations through acoustic damage and physiological stress. Military activities in some regions have coincided with orca strandings, injuries, and deaths. The stress caused by military operations might trigger behavioral changes in orca populations, potentially including increased aggression toward humans or disruption of cultural knowledge transmission. The possibility of novel diseases or parasites affecting orca populations represents another potential threat. Environmental stress weakens immune systems, making orca populations more vulnerable to disease. If a novel disease were to emerge that affected orca behavior or cognition, it could potentially disrupt the normal behavioral patterns that prevent hunting of humans. These environmental threats to orca populations are not hypothetical or distant possibilities. They are already occurring and already affecting orca populations in various regions. The most severe impact is being felt by populations dependent on declining prey, such as the southern resident orcas of the Pacific Northwest. These populations are facing existential threats, with numbers declining and some research suggesting that some populations may be approaching extinction. If orca populations go extinct or are reduced to small, remnant populations, the cultural knowledge maintained by these populations will be lost. The accumulated knowledge about salmon runs, about seal haul-outs, about migration routes and seasonal movements, all of this knowledge, maintained across generations by matriarchs and transmitted through teaching and social learning, will disappear. The extinction of a population is the extinction of a culture, a erasure of accumulated knowledge that took generations to accumulate. The implications for the peace between orcas and humans are complex. If orca populations decline severely, human encounters with orcas will decrease simply due to reduced orca numbers. The peace might be maintained not through orca choice but through the absence of orcas. Such a peace through extinction would represent a tragic outcome, the avoidance of conflict not through mutual respect or understanding but through the disappearance of one party. Conversely, if orca populations are reduced to small, remnant populations in limited areas with intensive human presence, the conditions that have maintained the peace might be disrupted. Stressed, declining populations might display behavioral changes. Cultural knowledge might be disrupted as older individuals die without successfully transmitting knowledge to younger individuals. The result could be populations of orcas displaying behavior radically different from the peaceful coexistence that has characterized the species historically. The preservation of orca populations in healthy conditions, with intact social structures, adequate prey, and psychological well-being, appears essential to maintaining the peace. The peace depends on orcas behaving as they naturally behave, making the decisions they naturally make about prey and hunting. Any disruption of these conditions, through environmental degradation, social disruption, or psychological stress, threatens to disrupt the peace. The responsibility for maintaining this peace rests primarily with humans. Humans have created the environmental threats that endanger orca populations. Humans have caused the depletion of salmon and other prey species. Humans have created the noise pollution that disrupts orca communication. Humans have released pollutants into the ocean that accumulate in orca tissues. Humans have disrupted orca social structures through capture for captivity and through other interventions. If humans wish to maintain the remarkable peace that has characterized orca-human relations throughout history, humans must address these threats to orca populations. The preservation of adequate prey populations through fisheries management and habitat restoration, the reduction of noise pollution through regulation of shipping and military activity, the reduction of chemical pollution through strict regulation of industrial practices, and the protection of orca social structures by ending capture for captivity, and by creating protected areas where orcas can live undisturbed. All of these are necessary to maintain the conditions for continued peace. The peace has been maintained by orca restraint and orca choice. Orcas, despite their power and capability to hunt humans, have chosen not to do so, guided by intelligence, culture, and empathy. Humans now have the choice of whether to preserve the conditions that allow orcas to maintain this choice, or to degrade those conditions to the point where orca behavior might change. The choice rests with humans, and the stakes are high, not just for the peace between orcas and humans, but for the survival of remarkable cultures and populations that have thrived for millennia. Section 15. What orca behavior reveals about intelligence and ethics. The phenomenon of orcas never hunting humans in the wild reveals profound truths about intelligence, consciousness, and ethical behavior. The orca, as a creature that possesses intelligence, culture, emotional sophistication, and the capability to hunt humans but chooses not to do so, offers a unique perspective on what intelligence means and how intelligent creatures make moral decisions. The conventional understanding of intelligence has often been centered on human cognition, with intelligence measured by criteria derived from human cognitive capacities. Yet intelligence is a multifaceted phenomenon that can manifest in different forms in different species. The orca demonstrates a form of intelligence that includes not just problem-solving and learning, but also cultural transmission, emotional sophistication, and decision-making based on complex integration of information and values. The orca's intelligence is fundamentally social. An orca's cognitive capacities have evolved and developed in the context of living in complex social groups with sophisticated relationships. Ethics generally refers to systems of values and principles that guide behavior, involving judgments about what is right and wrong, what is good and bad. Does the orca's refusal to hunt humans reflect ethical principles, or is it simply learned behavior without ethical content? The answer likely involves both elements. The learned behavior that prevents hunting of humans has the functional equivalent of an ethical principle, a rule or understanding that certain beings should not be harmed or hunted. Whether this learned behavior constitutes genuine ethics in a philosophical sense remains a subject for debate. But the fact remains that orcas behave in ways that are consistent with ethical principles, even if we cannot definitively say that they experience ethics in the same way that humans do. The emotional sophistication of orcas, particularly their capacity for empathy and their demonstration of mourning behaviors, suggests that they may experience something analogous to moral concern. An orca that mourns the death of a pod member is demonstrating concern for another being, a recognition of the moral significance of that being's existence and death. An orca that displays empathetic concern for an injured pod member is demonstrating a capacity to recognize and be moved by another being's suffering. If orcas are capable of empathetic concern for other orcas, it is plausible that they might extend such concern to other beings, including humans. The refusal to hunt humans might represent, at least in part, an empathetic recognition of humans as beings worthy of moral concern. An orca that recognizes a human as another subject with its own experience, its own emotions, and its own moral significance might refrain from hunting for reasons that involve something like moral concern. The contrast between orca behavior and human behavior is instructive. Humans possess sophisticated ethical systems, elaborate philosophical frameworks for thinking about morality, and explicit moral principles. Yet humans have historically hunted other animals, enslaved other humans, and engaged in violence and cruelty on vast scales. The capacity for sophisticated ethics does not appear to reliably prevent humans from causing harm. Orcas, by contrast, appear to maintain a more reliable commitment to not hunting certain creatures, including humans. This maintenance of behavioral restraint, without the explicit ethical philosophies that humans possess, raises interesting questions about the relationship between explicit ethical reasoning and actual moral behavior. It suggests that moral behavior might not require explicit ethical philosophies. It might instead emerge from emotional sophistication, empathy, and cultural learning. The orca thus offers a counterexample to the assumption that human morality is the standard by which all other forms of morality should be judged. The orca demonstrates that intelligence, empathy, and ethical behavior can manifest in forms different from human expressions of these capacities. The orca demonstrates that a creature can be intelligent, emotionally sophisticated, and behaviorally restrained in ways that might be called moral, without possessing the explicit ethical reasoning that characterizes human morality. The implications of orca behavior for human understanding of intelligence and ethics are significant. If we recognize orcas as intelligent, emotionally sophisticated beings capable of something like moral behavior, we must expand our understanding of what intelligence means and what ethics might entail. We must recognize that intelligence comes in multiple forms, adapted to the particular ecological and social circumstances of different species. We must recognize that ethical behavior might emerge from empathy and culture without requiring explicit philosophical reasoning. Furthermore, the recognition of orca intelligence and orca moral agency raises questions about human obligations toward orcas. If orcas are intelligent, emotionally sophisticated, capable of culture and moral agency, then humans have obligations toward them beyond merely refraining from harming them. Humans might have obligations to preserve orca populations, to protect orca habitat, to minimize noise and pollution that harm orcas, and to recognize orca agency and autonomy in human-orca interactions. The peace between orcas and humans, maintained by orca restraint and orca choice, reflects an implicit recognition by orcas of human moral worth. Orcas have refrained from hunting humans not because they lack the power to do so, but because they have chosen to recognize humans as beings worthy of that restraint. Humans, in turn, should recognize this restraint and reciprocate it, choosing to preserve the conditions that allow orcas to continue making that choice. Section 16. Conclusions and final reflections. We have journeyed through the remarkable world of orcas, exploring the biological, cognitive, emotional, cultural, and environmental factors that explain why these apex predators never hunt humans in the wild. The evidence converges on a conclusion that might seem paradoxical at first. The refusal of orcas to hunt humans reflects not their weakness or limitation, but their intelligence, their emotional sophistication, their culture, and their ethical nature. An orca is a creature of power and predatory capability. An adult male orca can reach 32 feet in length, weigh 6 tons, swim faster than humans can imagine, and kill whales dozens of times its own size. An orca possesses sensory capabilities that allow it to perceive the ocean world with a clarity that humans can barely comprehend. An orca possesses cognitive capacities that rival or exceed those of most terrestrial animals. An orca possesses emotional sophistication that is evident in its mourning behaviors, its displays of affection, and its apparent empathy. Yet this powerful, intelligent, emotionally sophisticated creature chooses not to hunt humans. This choice is not born from fear or weakness, but from intelligence and restraint. The orca's brain, with its complex architecture and its capacity for sophisticated thought, allows for discrimination among potential prey. The orca's sensory systems, particularly echolocation, allow for a complete and accurate perception of what humans are. The orcas learn knowledge and culture define humans as not appropriate prey. The peace between orcas and humans has been maintained across millennia through multiple reinforcing mechanisms. The acoustic distinctiveness of humans prevents them from being mistaken for familiar prey. The cultural knowledge transmitted from experienced orcas to younger orcas establishes and maintains the understanding that humans are not appropriate prey. The emotional sophistication and capacity for empathy that characterizes orcas enables recognition of humans as beings worthy of moral consideration. The psychological well-being and normal social structure of wild orca populations allows these mechanisms to operate reliably. Yet this peace is fragile and faces threats from multiple directions. Environmental degradation is depleting the prey populations that orcas depend on, causing starvation and psychological stress that could disrupt the behavioral patterns that have maintained the peace. Noise and chemical pollution are degrading orca health and disrupting normal behavior. Human ocean use is increasing, creating more frequent encounters between orcas and humans. Climate change is altering ocean ecosystems in ways that threaten orca populations. If orca populations are allowed to decline into extinction or near extinction, if their social structures are disrupted, if their environments are so degraded that normal behavior patterns fail, then the peace might be disrupted. An orca population facing starvation and driven to desperation might behave differently from wild orcas in normal circumstances. The behavioral patterns and cultural knowledge that have prevented hunting of humans for millennia might fail under extreme duress. The responsibility for maintaining this peace rests with humans. Humans have created the environmental threats that endanger orca populations. Humans have the power to mitigate these threats, to restore depleted prey populations, to reduce pollution, to create protected areas where orcas can live undisturbed. Whether humans will choose to exercise this power remains to be seen. The example of orca behavior offers profound lessons for humans. It demonstrates that intelligence is not exclusively human. It demonstrates that ethical behavior can emerge from empathy and culture without requiring explicit philosophical reasoning. It demonstrates that beings of great power can choose restraint. It demonstrates that peace between species is possible when one species respects the autonomy and moral worth of another. The orca, in its choice not to hunt humans despite the power to do so, offers a model of what might be called noble restraint. The orca could hunt humans but does not. The orca could treat humans as prey but recognizes humans as beings worthy of moral consideration. The orca maintains this choice, generation after generation, without external coercion or legal requirement. The orca does what is right, not because it must, but because its nature and its culture define it as right. If humans wish to deserve the restraint that orcas have shown for millennia, humans must reciprocate. Humans must choose to preserve orca populations, to protect orca habitat, to minimize the harm that human activities cause to orcas. Humans must recognize orcas not as resources to be exploited or curiosities to be captive for entertainment, but as intelligent, emotionally sophisticated, culturally rich beings worthy of respect and moral consideration. The peace between orcas and humans is one of the remarkable achievements of nature. It reflects the triumph of intelligence, empathy, and culture over pure predatory instinct. It demonstrates that beings of great power can coexist peacefully with creatures they could easily harm. It demonstrates that ethics need not be imposed by force. Ethics can emerge from the deliberate choices of intelligent beings to recognize the moral worth of others. This peace, achieved and maintained by orcas, is now endangered by human actions. Whether this peace will be preserved or disrupted depends on choices that humans make in the coming years and decades. If humans preserve the conditions that allow orcas to behave as they naturally do, to maintain their families, to transmit their cultures, to thrive in healthy populations and healthy ocean ecosystems, then the peace will likely continue. If humans allow orca populations and ocean ecosystems to degrade, then the peace may not survive. The choice is ours. The orcas have chosen restraint and respect. Now it is time for humans to choose wisely, to recognize the remarkable beings that share our oceans, and to preserve the conditions for continued peaceful coexistence. Epilogue. the deeper significance of orca-human peace. As we conclude this exploration of why orcas never hunt humans, we are left with a profound recognition of what this phenomenon reveals about our world. The peace between orcas and humans is not merely an interesting fact about animal behavior. It is a window into the deepest questions about consciousness, morality, and our place in the natural world. For millennia, humans have operated under the assumption that humans alone possess the capacity for restraint, ethics, and moral agency. We have assumed that morality is uniquely human, that only humans can recognize the moral worth of other beings, that only humans can choose to refrain from violence for reasons beyond mere self-interest. The orca challenges these assumptions. The orca demonstrates that these capacities are not uniquely human. The orca's refusal to hunt humans reflects intelligent decision-making, emotional sophistication, and something that might be called ethical behavior. The orca recognizes humans as beings worthy of moral consideration. The orca chooses not to harm beings it recognizes as having moral worth. This recognition invites us to expand our understanding of ourselves and our relationship to the natural world. If orcas possess intelligence and moral agency, then humans must reconsider how we treat not just orcas, but all intelligent beings. If a creature like the orca can recognize the moral worth of humans despite vast differences between our species, then humans should be capable of reciprocating, of recognizing the moral worth of orcas and other intelligent beings. The peace between orcas and humans also offers a vision of what coexistence between humans and other species might look like. In a world where orcas refuse to hunt humans, where humans refrain from capturing and enslaving orcas, where both species live in mutual respect and recognition of each other's autonomy, we see a model of peaceful coexistence. This model is not universally practiced. Humans continue to capture orcas for captivity, to damage orca habitat, to harm orca populations through pollution and fishing practices. But the model exists as a possibility, as something that has been achieved and that might be maintained and extended. The degradation of this peace through environmental destruction would represent a profound tragedy. Not merely the tragedy of species extinction, though that is tragic enough, but the tragedy of the loss of a unique achievement, a peace between two different species maintained across millennia through restraint and respect. If this peace is lost, if orca populations decline into extinction or near extinction, if the behavioral patterns that have maintained the peace break down under environmental duress, then humanity will have lost something precious and irreplaceable. The preservation of orca-human peace thus becomes an ethical imperative. Humans have the power to preserve the conditions that allow this peace to continue. Humans also have the power to destroy these conditions. The choice is a moral one, with implications that extend far beyond the orcas themselves. The orca, in its refusal to hunt humans despite the power to do so, has offered humanity a gift. The gift is not merely the absence of predation, though that is significant. The gift is also a lesson about intelligence, about ethics, about the possibilities for peaceful coexistence between different beings. The gift is an example of restraint born from wisdom, of ethical behavior emerging from culture and understanding. If humanity is wise, humanity will recognize this gift and will choose to preserve it. Humanity will protect orca populations, will restore ocean ecosystems, will reduce pollution and noise, will create the conditions for continued peaceful coexistence. Humanity will recognize orcas not as threats to be destroyed or curiosities to be captive, but as fellow subjects of the world, as intelligent, emotionally sophisticated, culturally rich beings worthy of respect, moral consideration, and protection. The peace between orcas and humans is a remarkable phenomenon, and in preserving it, humanity would preserve something valuable and irreplaceable, a testament to what is possible when different beings, separated by evolutionary distance and ecological role, choose to recognize each other's moral worth and to live in mutual respect. End of documentary Part 2. Closing statement. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of one of nature's most remarkable phenomena. We have journeyed into the depths of orca intelligence, orca culture, and orca ethics. We have examined the biological, cognitive, emotional, and cultural reasons why orcas never hunt humans in the wild. We have explored the contrasts between wild orcas living in natural conditions and captive orcas subjected to severe stress and dysfunction. We have considered the environmental threats facing orca populations and the implications for the continuation of the peace between orcas and humans. The story of orcas and humans is ultimately a story about intelligence, consciousness, and the possibilities for ethical coexistence between different beings. It is a story about restraint born from wisdom, about the recognition of moral worth across species boundaries, about the achievement and maintenance of peace through mutual respect. The continuation of this remarkable peace depends on choices that humans make. If you found this documentary thought-provoking, please share it with others. Discuss the fascinating intelligence and culture of orcas with people in your life. Consider how the achievements of orcas might inform human understanding of morality and ethics. And if you are inspired to action, consider what you might do to support conservation efforts aimed at protecting orca populations and restoring ocean ecosystems. We encourage you to leave your thoughts and reflections in the comments section. Please tell us your location, your time of viewing, and your thoughts on orca intelligence, orca culture, and the remarkable peace between orcas and humans. Your engagement helps us understand the reach and impact of this content. Most importantly, subscribe to our channel for future videos exploring the mysteries of nature and the remarkable creatures with whom we share our world. The ocean holds countless secrets, and the creatures that inhabit it have much to teach us about intelligence, consciousness, and ethical behavior. Thank you for watching. We hope this documentary has expanded your understanding of orcas and has inspired you to greater appreciation and respect for these remarkable beings. Preserve the peace. Protect the orcas. Recognize the intelligence and moral worth of all creatures with whom we share our world.